Chapter 121 Bite You. What? I feed you and you still dislike it? If it weren't for the fear that you would starve to death and it would be difficult to communicate with you, I would not bother to care about you. Duoyu also mumbled, and took a bite of the vegetable and shoved it into Mingyu. In the human mouth. Are you going to kill me? Naruto was shoved a pile of vegetables into his mouth, almost choking, and said angrily, a girl like you who is neither gentle nor short-tempered will never be wanted in the future. Duoyu also heard it. Xingmu glared at him and stared at him fiercely. What did you say? I said you won't be able to marry in the future. Naruto found it a little funny when she saw her reaction. You bastard, I want you to take care of it. Duoyu also threw down the bowl and chopsticks. The food was scattered all over the floor, and then she angrily ran to the window, ignored Naruto and looked out the window. The look on her face suddenly dimmed. That's right, for someone like himself who has been planted with a curse on his body, and who has to be a slave to Orochimaru all his life, how can he be qualified to pursue happiness? Looking back at Naruto, Duoyu also suddenly envied a person like him who was born in a big village since he was a child. Since he was a child, he didn't have to worry about being bullied by people from other villages, and he didn't have to worry that the place where he lived would turn into ruins. And he is just an orphan. In order to survive, he can only pursue powerful strength, otherwise he can only become a plaything for other strong people. Naruto suddenly found that Tayuya's back was a little lonely. What's the matter with you? He asked aloud the next moment. Turning his head, the expression on Tayuya's face returned to the rebellious look. You're so mean, he cursed viciously, and Duoyu also dragged him out of the room. Hey, where are you taking me? Naruto shouted, I haven't eaten yet. Damn you, I'm going to buy clothes now. I haven't changed them for a few days. It's so uncomfortable. Duoyu also glared at him and dragged him out of the hotel. At this time, it was getting late and it was dusk. Pedestrians on the road also returned home one after another. Duoyu just dragged Naruto and ran directly to an lingerie store, ignoring the strange looks from the two of them, and quickly picked out a set of underwear to buy, and dragged Naruto back to the hotel quickly. Naruto couldn't help but be speechless, but fortunately, before that, Taiyu also ordered another food to come in. This time, she patiently fed Naruto to eat and drink, and then said, Troublesome guy, I'm going to take a bath now, don't try to run away. Even if you escape in your current state, you will be punished. I'll catch up, and if I come out of the shower and find you're gone, I'll be dead when I find you. Then, in front of Naruto, she took off her jacket, revealing the delicate body inside. Naruto swallowed his saliva secretly, stared straight at her body, and secretly thought to himself, Tayuya's body is petite, but the place where he should be big is big, and the place where he should be erect is still very erect. Really unexpected. Taiyu also finished taking off, and when only her underwear was left, she realized that Naruto in front of her was staring at her with a burst of hot eyes, and she couldn't help but be stunned. Little devil, how old are you? Tayuya asked. Why? You look at me like this at a young age. Believe it or not, I dug out your eyeballs. Tayuya cursed with his hands on his hips, and at the same time, Yuhi's dizziness flashed across his face. She herself is only 15 or 16 years old, not much older than Naruto. At first, she didn't care about Naruto as a kid, but now she feels uncomfortable all over. This kid's eyes are too lustful. However, she couldn't lose her aura. Although she was a little shy and couldn't stand it, she still sounded like an adult teaching a child. After Naruto's lesson, she hurriedly took the newly bought underwear into the bathroom. Naruto let out a sigh of relief. After eating and drinking enough, the strength is back, and the toxins in the body are almost healed. It is time to go back. As soon as the chakra was lucky, a group of slightly spinning chakras suddenly appeared on the tied hand, and the rope was twisted instantly in the sound of chi-chi. And Duoyu who entered the bathroom didn't notice anything strange at all. She was not a perceptive ninja, and Naruto also tried his best to control the chakra aura, so that he would not be noticed as much as possible. After the rope was loosened, Naruto couldn't help but feel relieved for a while. Although the toxins in his body still remained, the effect was not too big. He just had to let Tsunade deal with it when he went back. However, just when he was about to jump out of the window to leave, a prank thought suddenly appeared in his heart. Why didn't he wait for her to wash out, and then swagger in front of her and leave? But her expression must be wonderful, right? Thinking of this, Naruto jumped onto the bed, lay down directly, and slowly waited for her to come out. That water in the bathroom kept coming, but Naruto suddenly became a little bit crazy. Thinking of the ambiguity along the way, he couldn't help shaking his head, took a deep breath, and calmed down his restless mind. At this moment, the door to the bathroom opened with a click, and Yuya came out while wiping Yuhi's wet long brown hair, the tips of which were long hanging behind her back, and there was a splash of water on her pretty face who had just come out of the bath. The moist Yuhi, a pair of big eyes also seems to contain water vapor, coupled with a white bathrobe, the slender legs are vaguely visible, and Naruto is also slightly absent. After Yuya came out, he also lost his mind when he saw Naruto. However, compared to Naruto's absence, Yuya exclaimed in the next moment, "How did you break free?" Naruto looked at her with a smile. "Yuya, you miscalculated, I was poisoned, but now the poison has been cured, you can't help me." Yuya also trembled all over, his face full of shock, and he became flustered for a while. He habitually touched his body but did not bring any cutting tools, nor did he have the flute in his hand. "My rope can't be freed even by a ninja's break-free technique. How on earth did you do it?" The next moment, Yuya clenched his fists and stared at him with a wary expression on his face. "Haha, don't be nervous, for the sake of you feeding me, I won't hurt you, but this time your plan will be in vain. I'm leaving by." Looking at her, she was nervous, flustered and confused. Looking shocked, Naruto was so amused, he laughed twice, opened the window and jumped out. However, before Naruto jumped out, Yuya swooped on him, wrapped his arms around his waist, and hugged him directly. "Don't want to leave," she cried out, biting Kiba's teeth, and clinging to his body desperately to prevent him from leaving. "You bastard, you are playing with me again. I'll bite you to death." Suddenly, Yuya Jonghi opened his mouth and bit Naruto's shoulder, and blood immediately flowed from him. Chapter 122 Bad Feeling. "Are you crazy?" Naruto felt a sharp pain in her shoulders, but she didn't expect her to be so impulsive, to bite herself. He quickly retracted his body and slapped Yuya's stomach, knocking her out and landing on the bed. Yuya's body was shocked, and the next moment, Naruto jumped up directly, pressed her under him, looked at the trace of blood on the corner of her mouth that belonged to him, and glared angrily, "Do you want to die? I'm going to bite you before I die." Yuya also shouted angrily, "You actually played with me twice. I'll never let you go. Crazy woman, then I'll kill you." Naruto raised his hand, the Rasengan in his hand rose up, and a strong aura suddenly spread, and the furnishings in the room were shaken by the swirling airflow. Yuya was also shocked, his pupils could not help shrinking, only then did he realize how stupid his behavior was. "Are you looking for death yourself? Going up and biting him? This guy is an opponent that even Kimimaro can't defeat, even Orochimaru-sama can't help him, it's ridiculous that he is so clueless." Watching this powerful ninjutsu gather in Naruto's hands, Yuya was dumbfounded. Is he going to die? Die in the hands of this guy? Yes, a person like himself who is only treated as a chess piece, so he can only die like this, right? "Uzumaki Naruto, after you kill me, you will return to Konoha smoothly, and the future will be bright, and there will be a Sayu who thinks of you. Your life will be much, much better than mine, right? To die in your hands, is this also a kind of destination for me? But, I am so unwilling. I also want strong power, I also want a better life, and I also want to be able to pursue my own happiness." Yuya also slowly closed his eyes, his breathing gradually calmed down, and said softly, "Go on, Naruto." However, after a long time, the pain still did not come, she couldn't help but open her eyes, only to see that the Rasengan in Naruto's hands had dissipated. "Why didn't you kill me?" Naruto walked away from her, walked to the window, shook his head, and turned back. "You are just a pawn of Orochimaru. Killing you has no effect on me, we just have different positions." "Are you taking pity on me?" Taiyu also called out. Naruto smiled slightly. "If you understand me like this, there is nothing to say. In short, I really want to go now, don't stop me. Finally, I advise you, as long as you stick to your heart, you will not be reduced by power. I hope you can change your destiny when I meet you next time." Quote. After speaking, Naruto jumped out from the window, and the figure gradually disappeared into the dim night. Tayuya lay blankly on the bed, recalling what Naruto said. "Stick to your heart, Uzumaki Naruto, can we meet again next time?" Naruto kept running in the dark of night. The reason why he let go of Duo Yuya just now was that he really couldn't handle this beautiful girl. Besides, although she didn't speak very well to her along the way, she still fed herself. This is the first time in this world that she has been fed by others, so it is even more impossible to kill her. Second, it can be seen that Duo Yu is not an unforgivable bad person, she just has a different position from her own, and seeing her eyes that are not reconciled to the control of fate like hers is also a little touched, she can be considered soft-hearted for a while. However, although Naruto also softened his heart towards Taiyu, he knew in his heart that if the other party was a heinous, Sasori-hearted woman who did all her bad things, she would kill him without hesitation, no matter how beautiful she was. Running all the way, rushing through the night. In the early morning of the next day, Naruto finally returned to the Land of Fire. The small town was in the Land of Fields. Although he let go of Duo Yuya, he did not guarantee that the other party would go back to find his whereabouts and move rescue soldiers. Trouble, he left the country as fast as possible. After arriving in the Land of Fire, Naruto just paused for a while, ate some game in the forest on the way, rested for a while and rushed back to Konoha again. I am afraid that Tsunade has already found out about her being taken away by Duoyu. Maybe Zuiyu and the others have already known about it. If Zuiyu knew that she was staying yesterday and was taken away, it would be troublesome. Konoha that afternoon. When he jumped in from the window of Hokage's office, Tsunade immediately exclaimed, then stepped forward and hugged him, squeezed his entire face into the pair of big breasts, and said excitedly, "Naruto, you stinky boy, finally came back alive. Are you really so worried about you?" Chizune on the side looked at the two of them with embarrassment, especially seeing that Naruto's whole face didn't fit into Tsunade-sama's chest. He couldn't help but slightly face Yuhi, secretly thinking that Tsunade-sama was really, Naruto would be suffocated to death like this what? Immediately, he thought of his pair of twin peaks that were obviously a few sizes smaller, and envied her again. First, let me go first. Although Naruto was squeezed into this incomparably soft place, his heart was rippling, but he still tried his best to break free. Son is so embarrassing. Tsunade hurriedly released him after hearing this, looked at him happily and said, "Tell me, how did you escape from the enemy?" Let's not talk about that. I want to ask if Sayu has returned to Konoha." Chizune on the side nodded and said, "Yeah, she came back yesterday, but she was." Tsunade hurriedly glared at her, and Chizune realized that he had missed the point, and immediately shut up. Naruto was stunned. What happened? What happened later? It's alright, Naruto, just come back, take a good rest these 2 days, we'll take care of other things. Tsunade said with a ha-ha. Chizune, on the other hand, hesitated, looking worried. Seeing them like this, Naruto suddenly had a bad premonition. Could it be that something happened to Zuoyu? However, looking at their appearance, it is obvious that they will not tell themselves. Even if they ask them at this moment, they will not say it, so I should ask Zuoyu personally. Thinking of this, Naruto and them left after saying goodbye. Seeing Naruto jumping out of the window and walking away, Tsunade let out a breath and glared at Chizune. "You girl, you almost missed out." "I'm sorry, Tsunade-sama." Chizune hurriedly apologized, but couldn't help saying, But, why don't you tell Naruto about this? If he finds out then, I'm afraid he will blame us. Tsunade sighed slightly and looked out the window. Don't worry, I will handle this matter. Zuoyu is very important in Naruto's heart. I will never let her have any trouble. Chapter 123 Conspiracy. Walking on the streets of Konoha, Naruto thought for a while. Tsunade was obviously hiding something from himself, and he felt more and more that something was wrong, so he couldn't help but quicken his pace and ran towards the Uchiha family's residence. Although he did not rest all night, Naruto is not very tired now, and the toxins remaining in the body have been completely dissolved by the body, so Tsunade's medical ninjutsu is not used at all. It seems that his body is still there are many secrets waiting to be developed. After a while, Naruto arrived at Sayu's house. He came to her room with ease, but did not find her figure. After a slight stun, he was relieved. It is still daytime, why is Zuoyu at home? It should be training. Shaking his head, Naruto didn't look for her anymore, but sat down in her room and rested. Time passed little by little, until night. He didn't wait for Zuoyu to come back. He frowned slightly. The next moment Naruto left this place. An underground base somewhere in Konoha. In the long dark corridor, only a few faint candles swayed gently, emitting a dim yellow light. Two tall Anbu walked slowly towards the innermost room in the corridor with a petite figure. That petite figure is Zuoyu. At this moment, she kept walking in with the two of them, looking at the dark environment around her. Her expression couldn't help but get a little nervous. Who are you taking me to see? Zuoyu asked coldly. One of the figures replied in an emotionless voice. It won't do you any harm to see a big man. Who is it? Zuoyu continued to ask. Another figure turned and glared at her. Don't ask more. This is Konoha's secret. Zuoyu couldn't learn anything from the two mouths, so she had to give up, but she felt that something was wrong in her heart. Soon, the two took her to a dark room and left. The door behind him slammed shut. In the darkness, Sayu's heartbeat couldn't help speeding up. Although these two Anbu were Konoha's ninjas, they acted so strangely and brought herself to such a dark place. She had a bad premonition. Suddenly, two candles lit up in the room, and suddenly a face appeared in Zuoyu's line of sight. I saw that man sitting quietly on a chair. Half of his body was tied with white bandages, and only one shining eye was exposed on his old wrinkled face. This man is Danzo. Uchiha Seijutsu. Danzo's old, low voice sounded. Zuoyu had a wary look on her face and said, "Who are you? Why are you looking for me?" At the same time, she looked around by the firelight, but found that the room was very spacious. Right in the middle of the room. As soon as you speak, there will be an echo. He, don't be afraid, I invited you here to discuss something with you. Danzo smiled slightly and said, do you really want power? So what? I can let you get what you want, as long as you promise me one condition. Danzo tempted. What conditions? Zuoyu frowned slightly, thinking to herself, this is definitely not a good condition. Join the route. Boom. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the door, followed by a stern scolding. Danzo. Don't even think about Lazuiwe joining the team. That route of yours is not a place for people to stay at all. Zuoyu turned her head sharply, just in time to see Tsunade appearing at the door of the room with two Anbu. The door had been blasted open by her strange force. Danzo frowned. Tsunade. Tsunade ignored Danzo, rushed over and took Sayu's arm and walked out. Don't listen to his nonsense. If you get into the route, you will be trained by him to be a tool without the slightest emotion. Let's go. When Zuoyu heard this, she couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. It turned out that this old man had such an idea. No wonder he brought himself to this dark place mysteriously. Certainly not a good person. Although she also wanted power very much, after contacting Naruto, she had already made a secret decision. If she could be with Naruto, what if she didn't have power? She believes that Naruto will protect herself. Suddenly, Danzo stood up abruptly and shouted angrily, Tsunade. Don't you forget that Uchiha Sasu is a missing nin. Joining the route is her only destination. Do you still want to protect her? Humph. Zuiyu has come back, so she is no longer missing nin. Tsunade snorted coldly, walking towards the door without stopping. I will never allow you to shoot at her. This is Hokage's order. Danzo's face was gloomy, and he suddenly waved his arm, and several figures suddenly jumped out from the darkness. He said coldly, break the rules of Konoha, even if you are Hokage, I will not let you go. Uchiha Sasu has given birth to a rebellious heart, so she must not continue to let her go unpunished. Danzo's righteous words. Tsunade couldn't help but get furious. This old guy is too arrogant. Is he bullying himself for his unstable foundation? Forget it. The next moment, she suddenly groaned and slammed her fist on the wall next to her. With a sudden bang, more than half of the wall collapsed, and the entire base couldn't help shaking. Danzo was shocked. Hurry up and stop her. Suddenly, several figures suddenly appeared beside Tsunade, and quickly made a few seals on her. Quartet barrier. In an instant, several light curtains rose beside Tsunade and Sayu, enclosing them almost instantly. Tsunade didn't expect this guy to be bold enough to shoot Hokage. He couldn't help but get angry. Danzo, you actually did something to me. Are you trying to rebel? Danzo didn't buy her account in the slightest, and laughed. I'm just preventing you from destroying the Konoha base. At this time, the two Anbu next to Tsunade also shot, and they quickly drew out their weapons and slashed at the barrier wall, but after a burst of sparks appeared, they were shocked by the shot. Even after retreating, the enchantment did not suffer any loss at all. The two of them couldn't help being shocked. Master Tsunade. Don't worry, Danzo doesn't dare to do anything to us. Tsunade calmed down slowly, stared at Danzo coldly and said, I have given an order. Uchiha Sasu will be my personal Anbu. If you don't want to be charged with the following, offending Hokage, stop now. Danzo's expression changed involuntarily. You actually made her your Anbu. Yeah, do you want to disobey Hokage's orders? Danzo couldn't help but lower his head and frowned, and suddenly he raised his head again and smiled and said, since this is the case, then I will even more wrong the 5th generation to stay in this enchantment for a while. Chapter 124 Tsunade's Deterrence. What? Before Tsunade got angry, Anbu, a female beside her, scolded angrily, Danzo, do you really think that after the death of the 3rd generation of adults, you can cover the sky with one hand? Danzo gave her a disdainful look, shook his head, stopped answering, and indifferently instructed the ninjas who were maintaining the barrier. Look at them, don't let them come out, I'll take care of something. He decided that since Tsunade had given an order, he would intercept the order halfway through, and then use his own means to persuade the elders to win Zuoyu over. At that time, Tsunade will be helpless. Little girl, after doing 5 generations of Hokage, you want to fight with my senior. Danzo gave Tsunade one last contemptuous look and walked out of the house. However, at this moment, there was another bang. Rasengan. After a burst of blue light, a large hole was pierced through the wall again, and the stone chips were flying. Danzo stepped back quickly, looking at the person who came. I saw Naruto exuding a faint golden light all over his body, and he kept a Rasengan in his hand, walking slowly step by step. Shizune followed him with a worried expression on his face. When he saw that Tsunade was trapped in the barrier, he couldn't help but rushed forward. Master Tsunade. Naruto. At this time, Tsunade, Sayu and others had also seen Naruto, and their faces couldn't help but be overjoyed. Naruto's face was calm, and he was already very annoyed. After waiting for a long time, he couldn't find the figure of Zuoyu. Later, he went to find Tsunade and found that she was not there. As a result, after pressing Shizune repeatedly, he learned that Tsunade came to the base of the root matter. So he asked Shizune to bring it and came here quickly, only to see this astonishing scene. What's going on? The 5th Hokage is actually trapped. Naruto laughed angrily, his eyes fixed on Danzo. After Danzo's previous surprise, he now saw that it was the Kyuubi, Nine-Tails Jinchuriki column force, and Naruto, the 6th generation heir, came, and his face suddenly turned down. Uzumaki Naruto, how did you come here? Is this where you came from? He tried to suppress Naruto with his identity. However, Naruto is a person who is not afraid of the sky and the earth. He used to keep a low profile because there was not much trouble. Now that trouble is coming, how can he keep a low profile? He didn't like Danzo at all, and now he was even more annoyed when he saw Tsunade's attack on Tsunade. He ignored Danzo, and the next moment his figure suddenly flashed out and appeared next to Anbu, who was maintaining the barrier at the fastest speed. The Rasengan in his hand suddenly pressed against the opponent's abdomen. Boom! With a bang, the violent energy vibrated continuously in the space, and Anbu flew backwards with a scream, slammed into the wall, and smashed the entire wall to burst. Because one person was attacked, the other people were unable to maintain the barrier and evacuated. Uzumaki Naruto, how dare you commit this crime? Danzo was shocked and angry, and he was also very shocked. Just now, his speed was so fast that it was difficult for him to keep up. After Tsunade got out of trouble, they all stood beside Naruto, and Naruto smiled lightly. I am just repaying you in the same way, you just committed a crime against Tsunade-sama. Danzo was suddenly at a loss for words, and snorted angrily, Uzumaki Naruto, as a human Jinchuriki column force, you must have the consciousness of being a human Jinchuriki column force. This is a matter between our high-level officials, and you have no right to interfere. Naruto shook his head and laughed. Tsunade stood up and laughed. Danzo, Naruto is the 6th generation heir, and will be the 6th generation Hokage in the future. Why is he not qualified? Although Sayu didn't know anything about Jinchuriki column power, but now she could see that she seemed to be involved in a high-level fight this time, she couldn't help but move closer to Naruto, secretly thinking, no matter what, I have to stand on Naruto's side. Okay. Since you are covering up a rebellious person like this, you are at your own risk. Danzo was extremely angry, but he knew that this time he was not prepared enough, and he couldn't win this Uchiha tribe to his side, so he snorted and said nothing. Talk again. I didn't leave. Tsunade waved her hand, and immediately took a few people away. Before leaving, she couldn't help but turn her head and threatened. Danzo, I don't care about the open and secret struggle between you and the 3 generations over the years, but if you dare to if I fight, I won't be as easy to talk as the 3rd generation. The big deal is that we will die. Zuiyu is my person now, if you want to move, you can try it. Hearing Tsunade's words, Danzo's expression couldn't help changing. He knew Tsunade's temper. When she said it, she would definitely do what she said. Below, there is no way. Damn Tsunade, Konoha will collapse under your management sooner or later. Danzo scolded secretly, but had to dispel his thoughts. He knew that although the 3rd generation passed away, the Hokage faction was still very firm in supporting Tsunade. If she really did something out of the ordinary, her goal would not be achieved, and the stability of Konoha village would be ruined. A few people walked out of the root base safely. Tsunade could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Zuiyu followed Naruto silently. She was still immersed in what happened just now. When Naruto saw her silent appearance, he couldn't help holding her shoulders, and softly comforted. Zuiyu, don't think too much, there is a bright place. There is darkness, and what happened today is the dark side of Konoha, but as long as you stick to your heart, you won't be affected by these things. Quote. Zuiyu's body was shocked. She raised her head and looked at Naruto steadily. Hearing his gentle comforting voice, her heart was filled with emotion. After a while, she finally nodded heavily. Well. Don't worry Naruto, I won't be too much. Think. Well, that's good. Naruto smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Tsunade couldn't help but teased. Yo, Naruto, you can be so gentle, I'm moved to hear it. Tsunade-sama. Shizune yelled awkwardly for Tsunade. Tsunade giggled and didn't take it seriously. I solved a troublesome matter, why don't we go to the bar? Tsunade-sama, it's so late, do you still want to go? Shizune protested. Huh, Shizune, you can go back and rest if you don't go. Tsunade glared at her. Shizune was at a loss right away. You must know that Tsunade-sama is very troublesome when he is drunk. If he hadn't been there to take care of her, he didn't know what would have happened. And Naruto, you should go too. Tsunade said to Naruto again. Naruto gave a wry smile and had to say to Zuiyu next to him. Okay, then, Zuiyu, go back alone first, it seems that I can't send you today. Zuiyu frowned, looked at Tsunade with some dissatisfaction, and suddenly said, I'm going to. Chapter 125 Sleep Together. Result, Tsunade brought a few people into the tavern, drinking wildly, and she just held down Danzo's head today, and she was in a good mood. She kept drinking and laughing, her face full of yuhi, and she saw the only male Naruto present. A moment of discomfort. Tsunade, why do you have nothing to do with your face to make you look so young and beautiful? And he kept dangling that pair of tits in front of his eyes. Isn't this a crime? Naruto's heart is secret. On the side, Sasu saw Naruto's gaze from time to Tsunade's twin peaks that made the woman look at Yuhi. Immediately, jealousy exploded in my heart, and angrily picked up the glass and drank the wine. The first time she drank, she choked on the sudden surge, and Shizune hurriedly rubbed her back. Zuoyu, don't force it if you don't know how to drink. Tsunade glanced at her and smiled. When Zuoyu heard this, she was so angry that she drank again. As a result, after a few drinks, she looked so drunk that she couldn't speak well. Tsunade didn't drink enough until the dead of night, at midnight. Shizune was handling the aftermath with a wry smile and helped her back. Seeing that Tsunade was drunk and unconscious, he couldn't help complaining to Naruto, hey, it seems that tomorrow Tsunade-sama will return again. I'm going to delay work. Naruto shook his head and laughed. Haha, I can only work hard for you, Sister Shizune. After you go back, you should rest well. Don't be exhausted. Hearing Naruto's concern, Shizune couldn't help feeling warm, and he didn't know what to think, so Yuhi's face quietly changed, and he hurriedly said goodbye to him and went back. Next, Naruto had no choice but to carry Zuoyu, who was also drunk, to her house. The night wind was blowing slowly, bringing a hint of coolness. Zuoyu on her back couldn't help shrinking her neck, and unconsciously hugged Naruto's neck even more. She whispered softly in her small cherry mouth. Language, called Naruto's name. Naruto couldn't help but smiled and quickened his pace. When I came to her home and put her on the bed, I found that her arms were tightly wrapped around her neck. He couldn't help but patted Zuiyu's tender Yuhi's cheek lightly, and called out, Zuiyu, it's time to go home, it's time to sleep. Zuiyu muttered and sprayed her mouth full of alcohol into Naruto's face, humming softly, don't move, let me be good. Hold you well. This girl, Naruto really doubted whether she fell asleep. Helpless, he had no choice but to hold her in his arms and lay down himself. However, holding such a fragrant and delicate body, Naruto could not help but feel a little throbbing in his heart. Although Sasu's body is not as mature and attractive as Yuhi and Tsunade, this delicate and soft touch still makes him feel incomparably tempted. Early the next morning, the sun slowly poured into the room, and a female voice suddenly screamed. Ah, Naruto, why are you in my bed? Zuiyu shyly propped herself on Naruto's chest. She just woke up and found herself lying on his chest, holding his neck tightly with both hands, not to mention, a pair of thighs were still tightly wrapped around his waist. Naruto was awakened by her actions, opened his eyes and saw Sayu staring at him with a face full of Yuhi, only to realize that it was dawn, but suddenly found that the hard thing under the quilt was soft. Zuoyu, are you awake? Naruto couldn't help yawning and said, last night you held me so tightly that you didn't let go. There's no other way but to do this. In other words, you can get up now. Right. Naruto finished speaking, his expression a little unnatural. Zuiyu was embarrassed, thinking about how she was jealous and drunk with Tsunade last night. She immediately hesitated to look at Naruto. But then she felt something hard in her abdomen pressing against her, which made her very uncomfortable. What's this? Ah! Zuo-yu reached out and touched it, and immediately touched the firm object. After being stunned for 3 seconds, she immediately reacted, screaming in horror and retracting her hand. Her body also suddenly jumped up. Touched by her tender little hand, Naruto couldn't help feeling agitated. Although his body was not fully developed, he had reached the age of development, and his physiology was also very strong, which made him embarrassed. He hurriedly sat up and looked at Zuo-yu with an embarrassed expression. Zuo-yu only felt that her hand was burning hot, her heart was beating wildly, and it almost jumped out of her throat. Looking at Naruto, her eyes became extremely shy, but she was very curious. It's so hard down there. The girl who is in puberty can't help but think about it in her heart at this moment. But luckily, Naruto didn't stay too long. He opened the door and left after saying goodbye, leaving Zuo-yu alone in the room, dazed. Naruto, who left Zuo-yu's room, hurried back to his room, washed hastily, changed into a white short-sleeved shirt, and was ready to have breakfast. As soon as she went out, she encountered a familiar figure standing there, and she walked over as soon as Naruto appeared. Exactly, Sakura. Naruto, that's great, you're fine. I heard that you were taken away yesterday, and I was scared to death. Sakura said excitedly. When did you come back? Why didn't you come to me? Made me worry for so long. Seeing her chattering appearance, Naruto couldn't say that he spent the night at Zuo-yu's place last night, so he could only smile and change the subject. I came back yesterday, and now I'm going to have breakfast. Okay, Naruto, let me go with you. Sakura took Naruto's arm and walked towards the street outside. Along the way, Sakura blamed herself again and said, if only I would have gone there at the time, at least I could delay a little time for you, hey. Fortunately, Sakura doesn't know about this, but it's alright now, you're back, everything is fine. It's alright. Naruto, please don't tell Zuo-yu. We've been hiding this matter from Zuo-yu. It would be troublesome if we let her know that you were taken for her sake. Naruto nodded and thought to himself, no wonder Zuo-yu didn't appear very excited after seeing him yesterday. It turned out that she didn't know that she had been kidnapped by Zuo-yu also. It seems that this matter will not be told to her again. When Sakura saw Naruto nod, she smiled with satisfaction, and she was secretly relieved. In fact, she said this with selfish intentions. It would be better if Sayu didn't know about it. If she did, she would definitely tell Naruto. Whatever idea arises, then you will have another rival in love. She didn't know that her companions were already progressing faster than her. The two were chatting and laughing, suddenly passing by a flower shop, and then only heard a crisp sound and a coquettish cry, ah. Naruto, you are back. Chapter 126 Two Women Entangled. Immediately afterwards, a pretty girl with yellow hair rushed over, put her arms around Naruto's neck, and shouted happily, great, Naruto, you finally came back safely. I saw how you were taken away that day. I am really worried to death. As she spoke, a trace of mist rose in her eyes, and she looked even more watery. Naruto smelled a fragrance in her nose. She didn't know if it was her body fragrance or the floral fragrance brought out by her. A helpless cry came from the store behind him. Hey, Ino, you kid, you broke the flower pot. Ino hurriedly pushed Naruto and left. Let's go, leave my mother alone. Although she hadn't seen each other for 2 days, it seemed like a year had passed, and she was listless when she was helping in the flower shop. Now that she sees Naruto, she has no intention of continuing to stay in the store. Naruto was dragged by Ino and ran halfway down the street. At this time, Sakura, who was behind him, felt that Naruto was taken away, and became dissatisfied. Hey, Ino, I want to take Naruto to breakfast. You drag him and run, why so far? As soon as Ino heard this, she immediately shouted, so Naruto hasn't had breakfast yet. Come and I'll take you to a breakfast restaurant, it's very delicious. As she said that, she hugged Naruto's arm intimately and walked to the other side. Go. Sakura was immediately unconvinced, and pulled Naruto's arm and shouted, "I'm the one who has to take Naruto to breakfast first. Naruto should go with me." "No, come with me. Follow me." Naruto was immediately speechless. Although both arms were tightly embraced by the girl's jade arms, embedded in two pairs of slightly raised hills, he felt a little airy, but he had no intention of losing weight. A big head. Suddenly, her eyes lit up, and she saw a figure at the door of a ball store in front of her, and hurriedly pulled out her hands and walked over. Anko. Anko was just about to buy some kusamaru for breakfast when he heard a familiar voice behind him, turned his head and saw that it was Naruto. It's you, stinky boy. It's been a long time." Anko laughed and walked over and said, "You are the heir to the 6th generation of Hokage. Hey, it's really amazing, he is indeed the man I fancy." Quote. Naruto smiled slightly and didn't care about her jokes. At this time, Sakura and Ino ran over and saw that Naruto was actually talking to Anko. Quite a while. It wasn't until Naruto and the two men approached the ball store with a smile that they came back to their senses, and they were even more shocked. They didn't expect that their rival in love had another Anko examiner. This is a typical old cow eating young grass. The two looked at each other and shouted in unison. Moreover, Naruto also seemed to be very familiar with her, which made them even more chilling. "So, does Naruto like women who are older than him?" Ino said. Sakura shook his head with a sad expression. "We all failed. It turns out that this guy Naruto has such a hobby. How can we win the Anko examiner?" As soon as Ino heard this, he looked down at his petite figure and the twin peaks on his chest that were completely incomparable to Anko's, and immediately became depressed. Suddenly, Sakura raised his head and said, "No. I will never give up. Even if Naruto really likes mature women, I will try my best to become more mature. 3 years. No, 2 years, I must let him impressive." Ino glanced at Sakura, and his heart also ignited fighting spirit. "Yes, we are still young. In a few years, Naruto will definitely find us good." The two looked at each other, and both received great encouragement from their respective eyes. But Naruto didn't know that his move had caused a major change in the mood of the two girls in an instant. He and Anko were chatting casually while eating meatballs. Anko's tone was full of admiration for Naruto, and his eyes couldn't help but cast a burst of admiration. "Naruto, soon, you will become the 6th generation of Konoha's Hokage. Then you will be able to. He has become my immediate boss. With our relationship, you can arrange a good position for me." Naruto heard that although he knew she was joking with him, he couldn't help sweating profusely. Seeing him in a predicament, Anko couldn't help giggling, patted him on the shoulder and smiled. "Those two girls seem to be interested in you. Naruto, you are really popular. How's it going? Which one do you like?" Naruto continued to sweat. If you don't speak, it means you want both. Haha, I didn't expect you to be so lustful. One is not satisfied. Do you want to count me as another?" The human face actually began to tease him. Naruto couldn't bear it. After all, Anko was not a little girl like Sakura Ino. She was a mature woman with a D cup, and she exuded a strong feminine scent. He couldn't stand it. I'm full, thank you for your hospitality, we'll see you next time." Naruto hurriedly ran out of the store after stuffing a few mouthfuls of meatballs, throwing off Sakura and Ino's pursuit by the way. Anko looked at Naruto's retreating back, and couldn't help showing a knowing smile at the corner of his mouth, and muttered, "I really look forward to your future as Hokage." Finally, he got rid of Sakura Ino after he was full, strolled the streets satisfied for a while, and was ready to start practicing. But just as he was about to head to the training ground, an ambush suddenly appeared in front of him, and a female voice came out from behind the mask with a clear and unsentimental expression. "Uzumaki Naruto, Tsunade-sama asked you to come over." Naruto couldn't help but stunned for a moment, and he couldn't help thinking, did Tsunade wake up so soon? She drank a lot yesterday. Shaking his head, he immediately followed Anbu to Hokage's office without thinking about it. As soon as he arrived, he found a tall figure with long white hair hanging down to his waist. "Lustful toad," Naruto exclaimed in surprise. Jiraiya turned her head and gave him a dissatisfied look. "I've already told you to stop calling me a lecherous toad." Naruto pouted and continued. "Lustful toad, did you find any important information after investigation?" Jiraiya was helpless, but after listening to Naruto's words, her expression suddenly became serious. "Naruto, this time I did find important news. This news is very bad for your future, so this time I'm here to take you out of the village to practice." "Yes." Hearing his words, Naruto's expression tightened, but he secretly thought that he was finally going out of the village to practice. Chapter 127 Farewell Before Leaving the Village. Tsunade looked at Naruto with a gentle smile and said, "Naruto, you will be leaving the village soon. It will take several years for you to come back. I hope you will become stronger by then." Naruto nodded with a knowing smile on his face. "Don't worry, when you come back, Master Tsunade, you can abdicate and retire." "Stinky boy, how dare you say I'm old?" Tsunade heard Naruto's tone of guy, jumped up and grabbed her shoulders. "Believe it or not, I'm welcome to you." Naruto smiled unmoved. Tsunade sighed. Her eyes were full of reluctance. She suddenly reached out and took off the necklace around her neck and put it lightly on Naruto's neck. "You are leaving, this necklace is for you. I hope you are safe and sound." After she finished speaking, she couldn't help but put her lips together, kissed Naruto's forehead gently, and showed him a kind and bright smile. Naruto couldn't help being stunned. The gentle touch on his forehead warmed his heart, and it felt so good to be cared for as soon as he left the village. Jiraiya looked at Naruto with admiration. Tsunade's kiss was something he had always dreamed of, but he couldn't get it until now. He didn't expect Naruto to get it so easily. "Okay, Naruto, I'll give you one day. We will leave the village tomorrow morning. During this time, you should say goodbye to your friends. After all, you will be gone for several years." Jiraiya waved. After saying this, he jumped out of the window. Next, Tsunade explained some of his going out of the village and let Naruto leave. In the evening, Sayu, who learned that Naruto was going out of the village to practice, found him. Naruto was sitting cross-legged at home practicing chakra. Seeing Zuiyu's sad and lonely face, he couldn't help but say, "Zuiyu, what's wrong? I heard that you are going out of the village tomorrow." Zuiyu stared at him and said. Naruto nodded, seeing the deep reluctance in her eyes, and sighing a little, comforting, "I will be back here in 3 years, and you must cultivate well in the village." Zuiyu was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "I will wait for you to come back in the village." Naruto smiled and nodded, thinking to himself, when did Zuiyu be so obedient? He didn't know. In fact, Zuiyu really wanted to go out with Naruto to the village, but she knew that going out with Naruto with her own strength would only cause him trouble, and it would only affect his cultivation. Becomes a burden. So, this time, Zuiyu silently vowed in her heart that she will definitely become stronger in a way that you approve, and let you see a different me when she comes back. Next, Zuiyu took Naruto to the night scene, and Naruto did not refuse. The two walked slowly, admiring the beautiful night. Zuiyu quietly followed Naruto, not saying a word. She just glanced at Naruto secretly from the corner of her eyes from time to time. Her face was sometimes sad and sometimes sweet, and then she remembered the embarrassing incident this morning, and there was a shy look on her face. Happiness. Naruto suddenly discovered that the arrogant and unreasonable Zuiyu in the past had become so gentle at this moment, and the way she curled up beside him had the taste of a little girl next door, and he couldn't help but feel a warm mood in his heart. This night is destined to be a fragment that the two will remember forever. The next day, Naruto, who had prepared everything early, appeared at the gate of the village with a scroll on his back, and the scroll sealed the various salutes he brought this time. Naruto looked left and right, but did not find Jiraiya. At this moment, a crisp voice suddenly came. "Naruto. So you are here." Naruto turned his head and looked at him, but it turned out to be Sakura, and the slim Ino stood beside her, and they both looked at him reluctantly. Sakura couldn't help but said, "Naruto, I went to your place to look for you last night but couldn't find you. I thought you had already left. Today, I went to ask Mr. Tsunade to know that you should be at the village gate." "Naruto, you really are you going?" Naruto smiled and nodded. "Of course, is this still lying to you?" The two of Sakura couldn't help but see a mist in their eyes. Seeing them so reluctant, Naruto had to comfort him. "Okay, it's not like I'm not coming back, won't we meet again in 3 years at most? Don't make much progress by then." After listening to Naruto's comfort, the two girls laughed again. "Naruto, when you come back, you have to find me as soon as possible," Sakura said. Ino on the side listened and pushed her away and shouted, "Sakura, you are too cunning, Naruto should find me immediately." Seeing that the two were arguing again, Naruto couldn't help but puff out his head. Just at this moment, a delicate and timid figure came to him. Naruto looked, it turned out to be Hinata. Seeing her cute appearance with Yuhi's face running towards him, Naruto couldn't help showing a knowing smile, saying that he hadn't seen her for several days. "Naruto." Hinata trotted all the way to him, shyly called out, panting slightly. Watching him go out of the village to experience the high-spirited appearance, his heartbeat couldn't help beating fiercely. "Hinata, have you been cultivating hard these days?" Naruto asked proactively, seeing her uncomfortable appearance being stared at by Sakura Ino. Naruto, I will always work hard." After hearing his greeting, Hinata felt that the hard work of cultivating in the past few days disappeared in a flash, and his heart was sweet. Pause. Hinata suddenly took out a small and delicate bento and handed it to him. Although under the staring eyes of Sakura, he still raised his head to look at Naruto and said, "Naruto, this is what I prepared for you. The bento, you can take it out and eat it when you get hungry on the road." Quote. Naruto's heart was hot. Hinata was so considerate and gentle, and even prepared a lunch box for himself. After he happily took it, he couldn't help but hug her. "Hinata, thank you." In the eyes of others, Hinata was hugged by Naruto at once, and his brain immediately crashed, and a small face suddenly rose to Yuhi, and he was a little reluctant to push Naruto away. "In the end, I had to squeeze the corner of my clothes tightly, trying my best not to faint." Fortunately, Naruto just hugged her for a while and let go of her, knowing that she was too shy and didn't kiss her, which allowed Hinata to breathe and not faint. Only in this way, the two women Sakura Ino on the side looked at Yuhi endlessly, and cast their murderous eyes to Hinata. Chapter 128 The experience begins. After a while, Tsunade and the other Xiaoqiangs also came to the gate of the village to see Naruto off. Seeing their enthusiasm, Naruto really felt the pure friendship of these Xiaoqiangs. And, Jiraiya appeared at the head of the village and waved goodbye to everyone with Naruto. After the two left the village, Jiraiya couldn't help laughing. "Naruto, there are so many good companions in the village, you must not let them down. Of course, it won't be long before I surpass you. Do you believe it?" Naruto replied with a confident smile. "Cut. What an arrogant kid. I'm the legendary Sannin." Jiraiya was very upset with Naruto's tone, and shouted, "I'll talk about this when you beat me. By the way, the bento in your hand is pretty good, so use it as a tribute." "Master." Naruto's face suddenly pulled down. Jiraiya couldn't help but patted his shoulder and said, just kidding, look at you like this, if I take something from your little girlfriend, you are not going to kill me." Naruto smiled. "However, I don't want this lunch, can you give me the necklace?" After a while, Jiraiya came over and said shamelessly. Naruto was speechless for a moment, and kicked him directly with one kick. Jiraiya dodged away with a smile, and shouted dissatisfiedly, "What an unlovable disciple, you have to respect the master, you know." The two of them talked and laughed like this and didn't feel bored along the way. Compared with staying in Konoha, Naruto also felt that the sky was high and the birds were flying. Maybe this is the passion of being a boy. After a few days, the two have left the country of fire. During this time, Jiraiya also talked to Naruto about Akatsuki and the threat this organization poses to him. Of course these Naruto know, and, compared to Jiraiya, Naruto has more information than Jiraiya. He knows every member's abilities and weaknesses in Akatsuki, so he doesn't know much about this organization now. Scared, the only thing to worry about is Obito, the masked man, and how he will sabotage his plans in the future. However, these things don't need to be thought about when he is not strong enough. Right now, what he cares most about is how to train himself and improve his ability. So, a few days later, Naruto and Jiraiya made a request to practice stronger magic. Jiraiya thought about it. Just when Naruto thought he was going to let himself practice Sage Mode, he heard him say, "Naruto, the chakra in your body is already very powerful, plus the spell you can control freely. The power of the seal, even some Kage-level powerhouses, can't compare with you in chakra, and you are still lacking in jutsu, so I will supervise you to strengthen ninjutsu in the past few days. Go ahead with your practice, and you can create new ninjutsu on your own when you have mastered some necessary and commonly used ninjutsu techniques." Compared with the original book, Jiraiya is very confident in Naruto's ninjutsu talent, so he hopes that he can become an erudite ninja, not only in the 5 elements of escape, but also in other fields such as sealing, enchantment and so on. Get in touch as soon as possible. Although Naruto thinks that being complex and not refined will make it difficult to improve his strength, but now he also feels that he has encountered a bottleneck, so let's follow Jiraiya's intention to learn systematic techniques from him first. Maybe it will help you. So, in the following days, Jiraiya continued to teach him some very practical techniques suitable for Naruto, such as various psychic techniques that cooperate with toads, and some sealing techniques, such as the seal of fire and the seal of the 5 elements. Such as sealing. While Naruto learned a lot of these high-end ninjutsu knowledge, he also carried out high-intensity taijutsu training. Soon, 3 months passed. On this day, Naruto finally learned most of Jiraiya's skills. Although he has not yet mastered it, he has been able to send and receive as he wishes. This makes Jiraiya very pleased, cannot help but praise him. The two came to a market town. There were not many people in the market town, but the street was crowded with people and looked messy. Jiraiya entered a pub first, called a waitress familiarly, and began to drink freely. Naruto looked at him so cheerful, and he didn't bother his yaxing, and just walked on the street by himself. Without the old-fashioned dress of the original book, with a white short-sleeved body, a dazzling blonde hair slowly fluttering on his forehead, with a faint smile on his face, his close and unrestrained appearance immediately attracted the attention of some passers-by. Among them were some mature women in their 30s and 40s, which Naruto just smiled and didn't care about. Suddenly, he saw a reward order somewhere on the corner of the street, and a group of people were talking about it. He couldn't help being a little curious, and walked over, thinking, is this the bounty order posted by the legendary Bounty Guild? But when he saw the above content, he couldn't help but stunned. I saw a photo attached to the reward list, but the head of the photo was a very beautiful girl. Naruto felt a little familiar, and after reading the text below, he finally woke up. It turned out to be her. I saw a few lines written on it. The original princess of the country of snow has been imprisoned by the rebels recently, and the country of snow has fallen into the control of the rebels. A bounty is hereby issued. I hope that all heroes will help and rescue the princess. The winner will not only get 6,000 wan's bounty, and it is very likely to win the favor of the princess. Those who are interested, please tear off the list and go directly to the snow country to perform the task. Santeifu. Quote. After reading these words, Naruto couldn't help sighing secretly in his heart. The original theatrical version of the plot has now appeared in this way, and depending on the situation, the princess seems to have been arrested. With Kazuhana's angry character, once the goal is achieved he will definitely be ruthless, but this time he just put her in jail. It seems that he did not get the key to the treasure, and he also let Santeifu escape. Thinking of this, Naruto stepped forward without hesitation, tore off the reward list, and stuffed it into his trousers pocket. Someone suddenly shouted around. "Hey, what are you doing, little brat? Didn't you see that I was still watching? Hand it over to me. Looking for a fight?" Naruto turned his head and saw that it was a big fat man with a fat face, holding a very fierce-looking knife in his hand. But he instantly saw through this man's strength, not as good as Genin. At this time, someone on the side said, "Is this kid trying to take over the mission?" "Haha, such a kid still wants to do this kind of task." "Don't be kidding, brother." Another person laughed. "Shish, maybe they're ninjas. Don't guess." Since Naruto didn't wear a forehead guard these days, everyone didn't know he was a Konoha ninja at this time. Hearing the miscellaneous remarks of the people around him, he smiled lightly, ignored it, and left. Chapter 129 Spiral Retaining Wall. I saw that the strong man saw Naruto walk away as if nothing had happened, and immediately stepped forward to stop him, shouting, "Boy, hand me the reward list. Otherwise, be careful, I will cut you." Naruto raised his eyes and glanced at him, couldn't help but smile slightly, and said, "If you have the ability, come and grab it. You're courting death." The big man's giant tower-like body rushed up the next moment, and swung a big knife in his hand. However, just before he cut it down, his body was already frozen in place. The boss with an open mouth was hissing and breathing, as if he couldn't catch a breath. The next moment, his body fell backward with a bang, his eyes rolled over, and he fainted. The onlookers couldn't help but take a deep breath, and immediately pushed back several dozen meters, staring at Naruto with a ghostly expression. Just now they only saw Naruto's body shaking slightly, an afterimage flashed in front of him, and the big man stopped. This unparalleled quick action, the people present can hardly even have a line of sight. How strong is this? Seeing Naruto's back disappearing in front of everyone came back to their senses with shock on their faces. After Naruto accepted the reward list, he had already decided to go to the land of snow. Since he came out to experience it, it would be good to do some interesting tasks. So, he returned to the previous pub and found Jiraiya. This guy was still immersed in the arms of beautiful women. Drunk Yuhi's face was full, and a pair of big hands kept walking around those women. After Naruto kicked open the door of the box, the service women screamed themselves. Jiraiya thought that some enemy was coming, and opened her confused drunk eyes, but it turned out to be Naruto, and she couldn't help saying angrily, "What are you doing here, you bastard? Didn't you see I was having a good time?" When the women heard it, they knew each other, and they were also a handsome young man. They immediately surrounded Naruto with a giggling smile, grabbed Naruto with one arm, and said with a mouthful of fragrance, "Hey, so small. The handsome guy also wants to come and have a taste. Hee, but I like my sister, come, let my sister serve you well." Quote. Saying that pretty mature woman began to grope up and down Naruto's body. After a while, her hand had already reached into Naruto's chest and gently stroked it against his chest. That technique was simply ecstasy. Incomparably, Naruto wanted to push it away, but it was difficult to start, so he could only stand there and stare at Jiraiya. When Jiraiya saw that Naruto was actually addicted to women's pornography, he burst into laughter and said with a smile, "Ha ha ha, Naruto, so you are also from my generation. Come on, since you have this heart, let's have a good time today." Seeing this disrespectful and lecherous toad, he actually encouraged himself. Naruto was immediately speechless, and quickly pulled the woman's hands away, pushed the woman who was trying to entangle him again, and came to him. He shouted, "Lustful toad. I just took a quest, and now I'm going to do it, so I'll let you know, since you're having such a good time, then I'll go first." Jiraiya is now immersed in the gentle village, unable to extricate himself. Hearing that, he just hummed twice, and he didn't know if he heard it or not. Seeing this, Naruto really wanted to punch him a few times, and finally he could only say, "My mission this time is to go snow country. I'm leaving first, come find me when you've had enough." Leaving Jiraiya alone in the box, Naruto took the lead. He now has a certain ability to protect himself. Even if he encounters a dilemma that is difficult for ordinary people to solve, he is confident that he can solve it, so this time he didn't force it. Told Jiraiya, just informed him, let him know, then find himself. What's more, he is not afraid that the two will not be able to contact each other in the future. After all, there are psychic beasts, and the two can contact at any time. Naruto, who is on the road alone, is not idle. Some time ago, he has been learning a lot of advanced techniques under the guidance of Jiraiya. Big Ball Rasengan. Super Big Ball Rasengan is nothing more than increasing the output of chakra and strengthening the control of chakra. Now Naruto is also a master, but compared with Futon Wind-style Rasenshuriken, the damage is still slightly insufficient, and now he can't throw the destructive Rasenshuriken out. In the end how? After much deliberation, Naruto felt that on the basis of not having the master's stronger power, he should improve other aspects first, such as defense. Yes, it is defense. Naruto thought about it carefully. He found that most of his ninjutsu was mainly offensive, and defensive ninjutsu was basically rare, while ordinary escape techniques such as Doden, Earth Style, Suiten, Water Style, and the like are not prominent, and they are still weak in defense. In the past battles, I used Shadow Clone to evade the enemy's Nirvana most of the time, but I couldn't do it in every case. If there is no defensive ninjutsu at hand at that time, it will definitely fall into crisis. After pondering for a long time, Naruto suddenly remembered the Super Big Ball Rasengan that he used when facing Kimamaro's attack. At that time, it was better to say that he was defending rather than attacking. Thinking about it, Naruto's eyes lit up involuntarily. He involuntarily stretched out his hands, stopped and slowly gathered chakra in front of him. A burst of blue slowly spun up, but this time it did not shrink in the palm, but gradually spread out, gradually forming a rotating chakra wall with a diameter of about 1 meter outside the palm. However, after a while, the rotating chakra wall slowly dissipated and could no longer be maintained. Naruto couldn't help frowning, thinking secretly in his heart. It seems that in order to form a chakra into a rotating wall, not only a continuous and powerful chakra is required, but also a more precise control force. Try again. Naruto stretched his palms forward and released the chakra quickly. A circular rotating chakra wall appeared in front of the palms, but it was very unstable. There was a strong wind, and after a while, he retracted his hands, rubbed the acupoints on his hands that were a little sore, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seems that we still need to practice hard. On the way to this mission, it seems that it will not be boring. Chapter 130 Arrive in Snow Country. It was not until the third day that Naruto came to the pier of the Land of Fire, ready to take a boat to the Land of Snow. In the past 2 days, in order to practice this technique named Spiral Wall Protection, 10 shadow clones have been assigned to practice constantly, while the main body is resting as much as possible to hurry on the road. Fortunately, Naruto has already mastered the advanced form-changing technique of Rasengan before. Although he encountered some problems when he practiced the spiral barrier, they were solved smoothly. Although he has not yet fully mastered it, he has already almost done. In fact, this just changes the shape of Rasengan from a round shape to a flat pie shape. Once the spiral protective wall is opened, it is equivalent to setting up a chakra enchantment in front of the body. Its protective power is higher than that of ordinary ones. His escape technique is definitely stronger, and this layer of protective wall also has attack power. If an enemy hits this chakra wall, it will be knocked out by countless rotating Chi-Jin, and its attack power is not worse than Rasengan. Moreover, in the process of gradual improvement, Naruto also found that this technique is not static. In the future, he envisages that this layer of protective wall can even be extended to the surrounding 360 degrees to form a closed space, but such of the control requirements for chakra are even higher, and to do this, it is impossible to do it with just the acupuncture points of both hands. You must learn to release chakra through the acupuncture points of your whole body. When necessary, it seems that I have to go to the Hyuga clan for some advice. While thinking about it, Naruto came to the pier and asked if there was a ship that had arrived in the snow country, but unexpectedly got a boat that had not yet arrived in the snow country. After I asked, I found out that the country of snow was originally a remote place, and now it is very close under the management of Kazuhana Furious Waves. Many people are reluctant to go to that mysterious place, so few ships go there. Naruto had no choice but to go to the market town near the pier to ask. At this moment, two figures suddenly entered Naruto's line of sight. Naruto was shocked, because the two of them were actually wearing Akatsuki's black Yuhi cloud robes. One of them was holding a huge Yuhi-colored three-edged sickle and swaggeringly asked for directions. Kakuzu and Hidan. Naruto frowned. Why are these two people? What a coincidence to come across here. I just came out of the village to practice, but I didn't expect to meet Akatsuki's guy so soon. Are these two trying to catch themselves in order to collect people Jinchuriki column? Out of curiosity, Naruto quietly approached the past, but heard Hidan pulling a passerby and shouting, "Hey, is there a boat going to the snow country?" No. The passerby trembled in fright when he saw the vicious looks of the two of them. Hidan angrily threw him away, and then suddenly ran to grab a captain and shouted, "I'm going to divert Laosu to the land of snow immediately. Did you hear me? Otherwise, I'll kill you and give it to the evil god as a matsuri." The captain was a middle-aged man in his 40s and 50s with a full beard, but he couldn't help the strong aura of the two. His body trembled and he couldn't speak. Did you hear me? Hidan slashed the wine barrel in half with his sickle, and the wine smashed into all directions. The captain immediately shouted, "Sir, forgive me. I'll take you there. Don't kill me." After hearing this, Hidan let him go with satisfaction. "For the sake of your obedience, I don't want you to be a matsuri product." Then he muttered, "Lord Evil God must not like the way your mouth is full of hair." Kakuzu on the side remained silent with a cold face. After Hidan finished speaking, he glanced at him and said dissatisfiedly, "I said Kakuzu, I was trying my best to ask for directions along the way. Don't fight with me when it comes to fighting." Kakuzu snorted, ignoring the way he chirped. Hidan felt bored, so he pouted his lips and stopped talking, but he still muttered, "It's really fast wood, so boring. Can you shut up? Believe it or not, I'll kill you." Kakuzu was annoyed and said coldly. Hidan laughed, "If you could kill me, I would have died 100 times. Kakuzu glared at him, and suddenly there was nothing he could do. Naruto listened to the conversation between the two not far away, and only then did he realize that the two had come for a mission, not to catch him. It appears that Akatsuki is now out raising money, and it's no surprise that the quest to rescue the Snow Princess has enough bounties to attract them. Only in this way, I will inevitably encounter them in the mission, and once they are recognized by them, I am afraid that there will be a lot of trouble." But Naruto was even more excited in his heart. The reason why he wanted to practice, he had to fight against powerful opponents. The two of Hidan Kakuzu are very strong. Although they are not afraid of them with their current strength, they should not be underestimated. Moreover, they appeared in the mission. Two powerful enemies, which is also quite interesting. Thinking like this, Naruto jumped onto the boat and walked into a cabin at will to rest. And Kakuzu Hidan did not seem to find the existence of Naruto, and stood on the bow of the boat to let the captain sail to the snow country at the fastest speed. Despite this, several people sailed at sea for 2 or 3 days before arriving in the country of snow. At this time, the surrounding climate gradually turned cold. Fortunately, Naruto had already bought a large black windbreaker and put it on his body on the way. When I got off the boat and set foot on the ice and snow in the country of snow, I didn't feel cold. And Kakuzu Hidan, the two big olds, didn't prepare clothes to keep out the cold. As soon as they got off the boat, they shuddered from the cold, and Hidan couldn't help complaining. However, the two chakra physiques are very strong, and they are not afraid of the cold in this area. Naruto went down from the other side of the boat. When the two of Kakuzu went straight to their destination, in order to try not to conflict with them before completing the task, he took a detour from the other direction. They advanced to the castle, to find the way, and they are better to act in the dark. After thinking about everything, Naruto put on a large black windbreaker and walked alone in the snow. While silently mastering the spiral retaining wall, he also felt the scenery of this snowy country. In his opinion, the snow scene in the snow country is actually quite spectacular. After Naruto walked for a while, he suddenly found that there were many footprints in the snow, and there were even battles in some places. Seeing this, he couldn't help but smile slightly. It seems that the snow country is quite lively now. I don't know how many variables my joining will cause here. Chapter 131 Uncle Beast. Snow Country Castle, like a steel cast, can't help but marvel at its fortified defense. Before Hidan and Kakuzu came to the castle, they couldn't help but admire the magnificent city in front of them. The whole castle is not bad. Hidan waved his scythe in the snow, his face full of fighting spirit. Kakuzu shook his head, showing disdain. Although this city looks magnificent, there is no strong man in it, and he can destroy such a castle at any time. Should we just go in or find out where the princess is first? Hidan asked. Kakuzu glared at him. We're here for the money. As long as I can get the money as soon as possible, the rest doesn't matter. When Hidan heard the words, he immediately said, "Okay, let's just rush in and find the city lord." So, two fearless guys rushed into the castle and were discovered immediately. The alarm sounded immediately, and the whole castle was boiling. When Naruto came to the castle, the two of Kakuzu had already entered. From a distance, he could feel the sound of explosions coming from the castle, as well as screams and thunder and lightning. He couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. It seems that those two guys are using the most direct method. Then let them toss and go, and I should go to rescue the princess first. The next moment, Naruto took action, randomly found a soldier who fell to the ground, forced him to ask him the direction of the prison, and sneaked over there. At this moment, most of the troops have been attracted by Kakuzu Hidan. His march was not difficult. Even if there were some sentries along the way, he also made the other party unconscious in time. In this way, Naruto entered the prison very smoothly. In the dark prison, Naruto found that there were still many ninjas, but most of them were some wandering ninjas and some missing nin, and when they saw Naruto appear, they all shouted for him to let them go. They went out, but when they just touched the iron bar with their hands, they were shocked by a burst of electric light and flew out, groaning in pain. In fact, most of these ninjas came because of the reward order, but because of their poor strength, they were caught by Kazuhana and locked in these special chakra cages, and when they looked at them, Naruto, it was found that everyone had a chakras uppressing machine placed in their abdomen. Seen that Kazuhana's anger still has some means. Naruto didn't have time to pay attention to these people, and continued to search for the location of Princess Kazuhana Koyuki beyond them. However, when he turned around the entire prison and found no figure of her, he couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, in a spacious and bright room, the tall Kazuhana furiously frowned at the girl in front of him. "You bitch, you have attracted such a troublesome and powerful enemy." Kazuhana scolded her angrily, while Koyuki had his hands tied behind his back, wearing only a thin white dress with some stains on it. There are blood stains on her beautiful face, and there are traces of being beaten on her beautiful face, but she is stubborn at the moment. "Bah, you devil, Santeifu will definitely find someone to rescue me." Kazuhana saw that she was still so stubborn, so she couldn't help but slap her across, and with a snap, Koyuki's body fell backwards, but fell right on the edge of the bed, and his head hit the edge of the bed all of a sudden. The whole person could not help but faint. She has never been treated like this before, and now she can't wait to slash the man in front of her with 1,000 swords, but she knows that she is a weak and powerless woman who can't resist, and can only hope that someone will come to save her. "Tell me where the hexagonal crystal is hidden. I can't bear it any longer," Kazuhana shouted with a grim face. "If you don't tell me again, don't blame my uncle for being cruel." Speaking, Kazuhana glanced at Koyuki's chest with a lewd face, and slowly leaned towards her. Koyuki's body trembled in an instant, his face was filled with fear, and he shouted, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" As if to respond to Koyuki's words, Kazuhana walked up angrily, picked her up, and threw her on the bed, laughing loudly. Let my good niece have a good time now. Deal with those two powerful enemies. Ah, you beast! You are my uncle! Koyuki exclaimed suddenly, her face full of helplessness and despair. In the past few days after she was arrested, although she was tortured and abused, she still felt deeply in her heart. Never thought that this ruthless uncle would do this to himself. At this moment, she can't wait to die directly. However, at this time, with her hands tied behind her back, even death was an extravagant hope. Seeing the despairing expression on Koyuki's face, Kazuhana burst into laughter at this moment, frantically, and roared, "You forced me. Who asked you not to cooperate well with me and tell me the whereabouts of the crystal? Such a powerful enemy, it was all caused by you." Koyuki struggled desperately, but Kazuhana had taken off his armor, revealing the strong muscles of his upper body, but Koyuki felt only nausea now. Oh my god, someone help me. If he was insulted by his uncle, he would rather jump from here and never live again. However, no one came in this room. Even if there were people outside the room, they were just guards, and no one would come to sympathize and rescue him at all. Koyuki's despairing mind went blank, waiting for the most painful thing in life to come. Kazuhana, who was preparing for the next step, put on a cloak and rushed out without even putting on his armor. Bastard! You've come here. Are you all trash? You can't even stop the two of you. Feng Huan Nutao cursed as soon as he left the room, but only a black figure flashed in his eyes. Damn it! Don't run! The next moment he immediately led someone to chase him out. The room, Koyuki couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief after Kazuhana's raging departure, and secretly said that he had finally escaped this disaster. At this moment, the whole room suddenly shook, a bang, and a wall suddenly burst open, followed by a figure flashed into the room. The person here is Naruto. Koyuki in the prison just now, so he separated dozens of shadow clones to quietly search other parts of the castle, and finally found this room, hid outside and eavesdropped on the situation inside, and learned that when Koyuki was in danger, he immediately took action, first using his clone to create chaos to distract Kazuhana's raging waves, and his own body rushed in to save people. Chapter 132 Give Away Treasures. Nor was he afraid of Kazuhana's rage. The strength of Kazuhana's raging waves just surpasses Jonin at most, and has not yet reached the level of elite Jonin, and it is not difficult for him to solve him. The reason for this was because Naruto didn't want to fight Hefeng Wa Nudao here. After all, Kakuzu Hidan and Kakuzu Hidan were also in the castle. If those two people noticed the movement on his side, they would definitely attract them. When it comes time to bring a Koyuki by yourself, you will really be in trouble. So, he plans to take Koyuki out of here first. As for Hidan and Kakuzu, if these two can't avoid conflict with them, then they can only fight when the time comes. After all, he wasn't afraid of fighting. Naruto's arrival made Koyuki panic again. Seeing him walking towards him with a smile on his face, he couldn't help asking in a trembling voice, "You, who are you?" Naruto knew the atrocities that Kazuhana was about to do to her just now. Seeing her trembling with fright at the moment, she felt a little sympathetic. After all, a weak woman was locked up alone for cruel torture. It's really not easy. He smiled slightly, stepped forward to untie the rope on her body, and then comforted softly, "It's all right, you are now safe, Her Royal Highness." Hearing Naruto's gentle words, Koyuki couldn't help trembling all over. All the people around him looked fierce these days, and he seemed to be in hell. The warm and kind smile on Naruto's face at this moment seemed like a ray of sunlight suddenly illuminated her painful and trembling state of mind. Are you the one sent by Santeifu to save me?" Naruto smiled and took out the reward order from his pocket and unfolded it to show her. The expression on Koyuki's face suddenly loosened, and he couldn't help but exclaimed excitedly, "Great! I'm finally saved. Yeah, now you don't have to worry about it. I will protect you from now on." Naruto stretched out his hand, pulled her up from the bed, pulled up another sheet and wrapped it around her, saying, "Get on my back." Koyuki has now regarded Naruto as a life-saving straw. Of course, he obeyed his words. Hearing that, he nodded immediately and leaned on him according to the words. Naruto tied the two with a rope in order to make a good move, and then turned around and smiled. "Okay, let's get out of here first." As he said that, he lifted the Rasengan and blasted a wall, revealing the ice and snow outside. At this moment, the two were above the castle, and Naruto jumped directly from here. Koyuki screamed suddenly, and was so frightened that he tightened Naruto's neck. When he opened his eyes, he found that he was still intact, and was now leaping forward on the city wall. "Don't be nervous, I'm a ninja, even if I jump from a high place, I won't fall to my death." Naruto couldn't help laughing when she saw her reaction. Koyuki couldn't help but slightly face Yuhi, but seeing Naruto's smile, he felt very at ease. Staying on his back at the moment felt an unprecedented sense of security. "What's your name? How old are you?" Koyuki finally asked after Naruto dashed for a long time. "Uzumaki Naruto, 13 years old." Uzumaki, Naruto. Koyuki's eyes flashed with brilliance, but he was very surprised at his age. He was only 13 years old, and he was several years younger than himself. Such a great thing. After running for a long time in the wind and snow, Naruto stopped until he was out of the castle's surveillance range. Koyuki couldn't help but burst into tears of excitement. He finally came out, and finally no longer accepted those painful tortures, and finally could not stop see Kazuhana's terrifying and disgusting face again. "Ooh!" She finally couldn't help burying her head on Naruto's head and started to cry. Tears fell on Naruto's neck drop by drop. Naruto couldn't help being a little speechless, but there was no way. I had to try my best to comfort her. "Okay, don't cry, now you are safe. As your Royal Highness, you have really suffered these days. I will protect you from now on, so you can rest assured." Hearing his comfort, Koyuki raised his head embarrassedly, wiped away his tears, and wrapped his arms around Naruto's neck even tighter. "By the way, do you know where Santeifu is? I haven't been able to contact him since I received the quest. This reward quest was released by him, so let's go find him next," Naruto said again. Koyuki shook his head. "I don't know where he is either." Naruto was speechless. If even Kazuhana Koyuki couldn't contact the person who posted this mission, then his bounty would not be honored. Moreover, even if there is no reward, wouldn't Koyuki be unable to return to Santeifu? "You're not leaving me, are you?" Koyuki whispered. "Ah, no, you can rest assured," Naruto comforted. "In my heart, I secretly said, trouble. This time there is more burden. However, since I have already taken over this task, I have to deal with it myself. This is also a kind of experience." In the end, he could only console himself with a wry smile. So, Naruto first decided to leave the snow country and settle down with Koyuki. However, just as he was about to leave, Koyuki suddenly said, "Naruto, I still have something to fetch, can you help me?" "What?" "It's a necklace." Naruto was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay, you show me the way." "It seems that you Koyuki have hidden the necklace beforehand. No wonder Kazuhana is still furious at this time, and he still wants to try both female dry Koyuki." So, Naruto followed the direction pointed by Koyuki to get the necklace. Fortunately, the necklace was hidden in a backward village in the snow country. It was from here that Mitsuha sent troops to retake power. Koyuki is captured, and he desperately escapes on a rescue mission. Kazuhana Nutao never imagined that Koyuki would deposit such an important necklace in a small village. When Koyuki got the necklace, he couldn't help but say proudly, "Hide the necklace here, the beast will never find it." Naruto smiled faintly, carried Koyuki on his back and left the village. Koyuki, who was sitting on Naruto's back, held the necklace in his hand. His face hesitated slightly, and then, as if he had made a major decision, he said to Naruto, "Naruto, can you take me to another place? I have something for you." Naruto didn't realize it for a while and asked, "What is it?" It's about this necklace. You saved me, I have nothing to repay you, just use those things as a reward. Koyuki said, her face darkened. She now has nothing, even if she has it, what about those treasures? She is absolutely unable to keep the treasure by herself. Rather than letting the treasure fall into the hands of others, it is better to give it to her own savior. Chapter 133 Battle of the Treasures. Naruto came to the treasure address Koyuki said according to his words, and a high platform appeared in front of him in a field of ice and snow. Naruto knew that as long as the hexagonal crystal in Koyuki's hand was inserted into the high platform, the country of snow would turn into a spring. Although there was no legendary treasure, Naruto would not stop Koyuki from doing so. Before carrying her to the high platform, Koyuki handed the hexagonal crystal to Naruto. After Naruto took it, just as he was about to plug it in, his expression couldn't help changing. Immediately afterwards, an incomparably strong breath came straight from a distance. The surrounding wind and snow were rolled up, and they rushed towards the two of Naruto. Before Naruto could insert the crystal necklace into the high platform, several figures appeared beside him. It's a hexagonal crystal. Hyoten Ice Style, Black Dragon Blizzard. The voice came, it was Kazuhana's furious waves. Koyuki's body couldn't help trembling, and hurriedly looked in the direction of the danger, but it was all pitch black. The storm came roaring like a giant dragon. Naruto had no choice but to retract the necklace. His palms slammed forward, a spiral barrier was formed, and the violent black long dragon was suddenly forced outside the spiral barrier and turned into dust, unable to get close. He floated back with Koyuki on his back, watching Kazuhana's furious waves with a wary expression. At this time, the two figures also looked at Naruto. It was Hidan and Kakuzu. Just now, the two of them directly attacked the castle. There was a lot of commotion in the whole castle, and people were panicking. In the end, they searched the entire castle and couldn't find Koyuki's figure. Finally, they encountered Kazuhana Furious Wave and fought with him for a while. Afterwards, Funghua Nutao was finally defeated, and was subdued by the two of them, asking him to tell the whereabouts of the princess. Kazuhana was forced to bring the two to the room, but found that Koyuki had long since disappeared, and was immediately beaten by the two. In desperation, he finally had to come up with a means to save his life and bring the two to this treasure land, and the two who came for the money immediately agreed and followed him to this place. It was Naruto who was about to open the treasure. Two adults, that kid holds the key to the treasure. Kazuhana shouted hurriedly. The two of Hidan Kakuzu heard the words, their eyes lit up, and Hidan shouted, "Haha, this is released, Kakuzu, with this treasure, what other tasks will we do in the future, and the money will be raised in one fell swoop." Kakuzu was also very excited. He didn't care about money, so he rushed towards Naruto and shouted coldly, "Boy, hand over the keys. I can spare you." Naruto looked at him calmly, and said lightly, "Go away." Kakuzu was furious, and the man was still in the air, and immediately slammed his hand, and then the whole palm immediately disconnected from the wrist, and flew towards Naruto at once. The speed was extremely fast, and there was no response at all. Did Naruto realize that this undead old monster that had lived for 100 years did not have any Kekkei Genkei, but his combat experience and the ruthlessness of his shots were definitely among the best among Akatsuki. Before he could think about it, he suddenly raised his hand and opened a spiral protective wall. The palm was about to touch Naruto's body, but it was blocked by the spiral protective wall and bounced out again. Palm, Kakuzu felt the severe pain in his palm, his face full of surprise, and then he fell to the ground and looked at Naruto carefully. To meet a guy who can resist him. However, after looking at it for a while, Kakuzu suddenly exclaimed, "You are Konoha's Kyubi, Nine Tails, Person Jinchuriki, Column Force." At this time Hidan also rushed over and shouted in surprise when he heard Kakuzu's words, "It's true. I didn't expect this guy to come to us by himself. I'm so lucky. Today we have both money and people." Ah! Angry Kazuhana behind them learned that these people actually knew each other, and they seem to be enemies, and his heart burst with joy. I will watch you snipe and muscles compete and benefit from it. Naruto didn't speak. At this time, his expression was slightly solemn. He didn't expect to meet them here. If he was alone, he would never be afraid, but there was a Koyuki on his back. Just deal with Koyuki. Thinking of this, he silently made a few seals, bit his finger and patted the ground lightly. With a soft bang, a big toad that was 2 people tall appeared in front of him. As soon as it appeared, the toad couldn't help shaking his body and shouted, "It's so cold, where is this?" Naruto didn't have time to talk to it, so he just ordered, "Help me take her back, I'm going to fight now." After saying that, he didn't care how surprised and confused Koyuki was. He stuffed her into the big toad mouth. Koyuki looked at Naruto's movements inexplicably, and saw that he suddenly summoned a big toad, and suddenly became curious, but he didn't expect that he would actually let the toad eat himself, and he was so frightened that he turned pale and screamed. "Sorry, just hide for a while." In the end, she only heard Naruto's words, and the next moment, she disappeared into the ice and snow with the big toad. At this time, Naruto looked up at the 2 in front of him. At this time Hidan shouted, "Boy, have the funeral been handled? Now let's fight." Naruto smiled slightly. Just now, they didn't start when they summoned the toad to send Koyuki away. It seemed that they also wanted to fight with their own strength. "That's what you want." Naruto didn't turn on the curse mark, and rushed towards them directly. Hidan shouted excitedly and came over with a scythe. Kakuzu was not far behind. After hardening his fist with the Doden Earth-style technique, he slammed punch after punch, although his strength was not as strong as Geton Tsunade, but with such force, you're bound to get hurt if you get punched. Boom boom boom. In the field, the snow was flying all over the sky, and the snow was directly smashed into large holes with potholes. Looking at the battle of several people, Kazuhana's anger is in a cold sweat. This level of battle is not for him to join. Directly in front of them, he can't last a few rounds. It's just that those 2 men are so powerful, but the blonde boy looks like he is only in his teens, yet he is so strong. And it's possible to get around between the 2 of them. This is even more incredible. And when Koyuki was on his back just now, it seems that he also took Koyuki away. However, he suddenly thought of a question, and his whole body was suddenly cold. With the strength of this young man, when he came to rescue Koyuki, he did not start with himself. Why is this? Do you want to slowly torture yourself later? Kazuhana's heart was full of fear, and he could not help but quietly back away, preparing to stay away from this terrifying place. Chapter 134 Great War. The 3 of Naruto didn't care about Kazuhana's raging movements, because they were all immersed in the fight. Naruto and Kakuzu's physical skills are not much different, but because Kakuzu's attacks are so fierce and sharp, Naruto didn't dare to fight with him for a while, and Hidan's scythe on the side was swung from time to time, which made him even more so. It is difficult to deal with, after all, with 1 enemy and 2, and it is also a physical technique. Naruto in the normal state is indeed a bit overwhelmed. With a bang, Naruto blocked Kakuzu's heavy punch with both hands, and his body was smashed and flew out, and a long trace was drawn in the snow under his feet. Kakuzu smiled. "You can reach this level at a young age. You are the best ninja I have seen in 100 years." Facing Kakuzu's praise, Naruto's expression remained unchanged, but he was secretly planning how to defeat the 2 with an unexpected attack. In the ice and snow generation, the 3 looked at each other quietly. Suddenly, Naruto's hands danced into an afterimage, and a ninjutsu quickly formed a hand seal. Futon, wind style, blast blade. Boom boom boom. Accompanied by the wind and snow, the air current in a large area of air in front of Naruto suddenly became more violent. In a short while, the wind and snow in front of him had turned into a wild dance of wind blades, and among those wind blades, there was another with the wind and snow. It looks like a feast of blizzard from a distance. Seeing this, Kakuzu's face could not help but change color slightly. He could feel the wind blade containing powerful chakra in this blizzard. If he was ravaged by these blizzards for a while, he would definitely become completely incorrupt, even if he had a hardened body. Hard to stop it. Not to mention Hidan. Go back. Thinking of this, Kakuzu hurriedly shouted to Hidan next to him. Hidan heard the words and knew that this ninjutsu was not easy, so he quickly stepped back. Kakuzu suddenly stood in front of him, bowed slightly, and puffed up the fast hand seal in Chakra's hands. Doden, Earth Style, Triple Earth Wall. Sweden, Water Style, Triple Water Formation Wall. Chakra poured out. Kakuzu used two difficult ninjutsu at once, and the 6 paths water and soil wall suddenly rose from the ground in front of him. The water wall and the soil wall were intertwined, forming a huge defensive barrier. At this time, Naruto's art, which was transformed from Futon Wind Style Daitapa, Great Breakthrough, and Futon Wind Style Wind Blade, finally rushed towards the two of them. In this technique, he also added a lot of chakra, so the attack power of each wind blade is enough to tear the human body. Because Kakuzu saw this, he solemnly used multiple defenses. Boom boom boom. There was a loud noise like the sky and the earth cracking. The blizzard was mixed with wind blades, and the water wall and the earth wall were blasted apart. Kakuzu resisted this monstrous attack with a solemn expression. At the intersection of energy, the snow was directly lifted by a thick layer of soil, and the snow was mixed with frozen soil, and the surrounding air flow became chaotic. Hidan hid behind Kakuzu and couldn't help shouting, "What a powerful boy, I didn't expect to be able to perform such a strong ninjutsu." Kakuzu snorted and immediately increased the chakra output. When only the last 2 walls of water and soil were left, the blizzard finally calmed down. At this time, Kakuzu breathed a sigh of relief and finally blocked a wave of attacks. However, just as he relaxed for a moment, Naruto's figure suddenly appeared behind him. Curse Seal 2 has already been opened. Hidan is exclaiming, "Be careful." Only then did I realize that the blizzard was actually released to cover the eyes and ears of the two of them, and the real attack was here. However, before Hidan could think about it, a whistling Rasengan slammed into Kakuzu's back. And the Rasengan in Naruto's hand is no longer the original light blue, but with a hint of white air. This is the Rasengan with the wind attribute added initially, which is the unfinished Rasenshuriken. Named Futon Wind Style Rasengan. Its power is more than double that of ordinary Rasengan, but it has no side effects on itself. It is just right to deal with Kakuzu, a Kage-level powerhouse. In Rasengan's hissing rotation, a mask on Kakuzu's back was directly smashed into pieces, and his whole body also flew forward and slammed into the snow with a bang, arousing a flurry of snow. Hidan finally rushed up at this time, and the sickle in his hand slammed over, directly covering Naruto's neck. The period when Naruto attacked Kakuzu just now, Hidan had already rushed over, and it was difficult for Naruto to escape at this moment. If it was Hiraishin's technique, he would never take such a situation into his eyes, but at this moment he would not. In the midst of crisis, Naruto's left hand, which had not completely dissipated after knocking Kakuzu out, suddenly roared again, and then his palm waved violently. The next moment, a burst of sparks exploded, and Hidan's sickle slammed into a spiral wall. After a stalemate for a while, Hidan finally gave up and retreated, but the side was already shattered by the spiral force. Finally caught up. Fortunately, at the moment just now, I made a breakthrough in the use of the spiral protective wall, and created a protective wall to block in front of me at a faster speed than before. Otherwise, he will really take away the blood. At that time, he can only fight back. What a powerful boy. The reaction is so fast. Hidan shouted, "Kakuzu, how long are you still lying there and pretending to be dead? This boy is difficult for me to deal with alone." Hidan, who has always been arrogant, at this moment, there is nothing to do with Naruto. Only then did Kakuzu calmly stand up from the pit, looking at Naruto calmly, hiding a trace of anger. "Very good, you actually made me so embarrassed." Kakuzu walked towards him step by step, and said coldly, "Today I want you to dig out your heart." Seeing that he came in intact, Naruto of course knew that he had 5 hearts. I am afraid that his attack just now cost him a heart, but in order to paralyze him, Naruto still pretended to be shocked and exclaimed, "No. Possibly. How did you not die?" Kakuzu laughed at this. "I am immortal. So today is destined to be yours." Naruto sneered secretly in his heart. This guy is still arrogant and pretending to force himself, but he doesn't know that he already knew his weakness. Next time, just keep hitting his mask all the time. Once the 4 masks are broken, then a fatal blow to his body will definitely send him, an old monster known as undead, to hell. The next moment, just when Naruto was going to rush to fight again, he suddenly saw that the expressions of the 2 of them changed. Immediately afterwards, Kakuzu stared at Naruto unwillingly, and suddenly said, "Hidan, let's retreat." Chapter 135 Nowhere to Go. A bang sounded, and bursts of smoke suddenly filled the air. When Naruto was stunned for a moment, the 2 had quickly withdrawn. Seeing the figures of the 2 quickly leaving, Naruto did not pursue him. As a Kage-level powerhouse, if he wanted to retreat, he could hardly stay at the same level, unless the opponent had advanced time-space ninjutsu. Suddenly, Naruto was the only one left at the scene. Looking at the ice and snow in front of him, he shook his head, looked at the high platform with the crystal necklace in his hand, and immediately retracted his pocket and left the place as soon as he moved. The figure gradually disappeared into the snow. Along the way, Naruto silently absorbed the experience of fighting the 2 of them just now, and gained some insights from it. For him, the biggest reward of this mission was not to rescue Koyuki, but to fight 2 strong men and gain experience. And there are not many such opportunities. A few days later, Naruto reappeared in the original town, but Jiraiya had already left. He didn't know where to go. He was not in a hurry. A toad was summoned from the alley. "It's Naruto, do you have anything to do with me?" The toad, who was only 1 person tall, said as soon as he came out. Naruto smiled slightly. "Where's the girl I sent over the other day? Help me bring her out." "Oh, you mean that beautiful girl, she." The toad mentioned this question, but he was a little hesitant to speak. "Well, what's wrong?" Naruto couldn't help but wonder. Did something happen to her? Impossible. Mount Myoboku can be regarded as a fairyland on Earth, and there is no danger there at all. Even I have never been to that place. "Oh, there's no problem. If that's the case, I'll let someone take her out." Toad laughed dryly and disappeared in place with a bang. After a while, Naruto used the psychic technique again by hand seal. This time, a taller toad appeared, and then I saw it opened its mouth wide, and a figure crawled out immediately. It was Koyuki. And when the toad saw Koyuki come out, he disappeared without a word to Naruto. As soon as Koyuki came out, he lay on the ground directly, and got up in a very embarrassed way to see Naruto, and seemed to be stunned, and immediately a burst of resentment, grievance, and resentment appeared on his pretty face. Various complex looks. Naruto's heart fluttered when he saw it. "Princess Koyuki, are you alright?" Naruto asked with concern. He threw the family directly on Mount Myoboku, although it was to protect her and keep her away from the battlefield, but she has been ignored these few days. Kind of unreasonable. Naruto didn't say anything, but Koyuki cried out immediately after speaking, and then couldn't help but pounce directly. A pair of pink fists smashed towards Naruto's chest desperately, and cried out in his mouth, You bastard, you left me alone in such an inexplicable place and didn't come to me for so many days. I thought I died and went to hell. Although the scenery in that place is not bad, it doesn't look like it looks like hell, but it's full of toads, tadpoles, and the big toad that can crush me to death with 1 foot. You know how scared I am. It's okay, but after these few days, that toad mother-in-law Ten gave me earthworms and worms. I couldn't eat them, and later vomited them all out. Woo, you bastard, leave me alone and leave me alone. I'm going to starve you to death, you know. After a while of crying, Naruto finally understood. It turned out that Koyuki couldn't adapt to the life there when he first arrived at Miaomu Mountain, and he could only eat those kinds of bugs even when he was eating. The daughter's mood. Naruto shook his head and laughed, patted her on the back and comforted. Okay, it's all my fault. I didn't think about it carefully, and you have been wronged by your highness princess, then I'll take you to dinner now. Koyuki was comforted by him, and his mood miraculously settled down. Only then did she realize that she had thrown herself into his arms. Thinking of the coquettish cry just now, her pretty face suddenly turned into Yuhi, and she left at once. He fell into his arms, bowed his head and stood beside him, but his heart was beating wildly. It's just that I haven't seen him for a few days, and Koyuki has a feeling of reluctance in her heart. When she was on Mount Myoboku, she Tenten recalled the feeling of leaning on Naruto's back, as if the sky fell and he was safe. Sensation, making her girlish heart burst into turmoil. At this moment, returning to his side, Koyuki felt sweet in his heart when he saw this boy who was only meeting for the first time. Taking Koyuki to eat, Naruto glanced at her with lingering fears, feeling a little speechless. What kind of starvation has she made these days? Just now, this princess, Her Royal Highness, actually ate 3 people's portion in one go, even if I am usually very hungry, and I have about the same amount of food. And Koyuki also seemed to realize this. After eating, Yuhi followed Naruto with a face, without saying a word. Naruto glanced back at her and saw that she was still wearing the same clothes that day. After a slight sigh, he took her to the bathroom to wash it again, and bought her a set of clothes and trousers for her to put on. It wasn't until night that Naruto settled the trouble, and after the two rested in the hotel for a day, Naruto was ready to set off. After grooming and dressing up, Koyuki looks extraordinarily youthful and beautiful. As a princess and an actress, she has 2 exciting temperaments of fashion and elegance. With her well-developed body, Naruto has a kind of worthy of it. It is the feeling of Her Royal Highness. The two stood at the entrance of the town. Naruto glanced at Koyuki, and finally put forward the thought in his heart. Princess Koyuki, do you have a place to go now? Hearing this, Koyuki was stunned for a moment, then his expression darkened, and he lowered his head and said silently, my country has already been occupied, and Santeifu doesn't know where it is. Now I am alone and have nowhere to go. Quote. Seeing her desolate look, Naruto bit Kiba and finally couldn't come up with the words to say goodbye here. After pondering for a long time, he had to say, then you stay by my side first, we will try to find a way along the way. Find Santeifu. Koyuki couldn't help but smile when he heard the words, and he giggled, well, Naruto, you are so kind. In the future, if you protect me, I will not be afraid of anything. Seeing her cheering, Naruto shook his head and sighed in his heart. With such a dragging oil bottle, how could he experience himself? If he couldn't find Santeifu in a short time, he had to send her to Konoha first. Been living for a while. Chapter 136 Cut Beard. A few days later, Naruto finally learned about Jiraiya's whereabouts from Toad. It turns out that this guy has been looking for him since he left that day. Later, he found out through Toad that he was going to the country of snow, so this guy is in the snow these days. In the country. And now that he had returned from the snow country, Naruto smiled helplessly, and after passing the news to Jiraiya through Toad, he planned to wait for him in a nearby village to study a genin technique with peace of mind. Originally, he planned to travel to various countries to see the ninjas of various countries, and fight some strong men by the way, but because of Koyuki, he had to put this plan on hold for the time being and chose to study ninjutsu in the nearest area. Since the last time he created the spiral barrier, Naruto has used it quite proficiently. The next step is to develop various other Rasengan techniques, such as the spiral suction pill that can suck the enemy directly, and the spiral bullet that shrinks the Rasengan smaller and can be thrown out. Of course, these are all it is still being conceived, and more exploration is needed at present. On this day, Naruto separated dozens of shadow clone to practice in the forest near the village. He was sweating profusely. Sun slanted down from the shadows of Madara's trees, and before he knew it, Naruto fell asleep leaning against the tree trunk. Every moment, a charming figure came to him, slowly squatted down, and looked at him seriously with a pair of wonderful eyes. It was Koyuki who came. At this moment, she looked at Naruto who was sleeping, and suddenly gently untied her coat and draped it over him, then sat on the spot with her hands on her cheeks and looked at his face without blinking. He looks so cute when he sleeps. So attractive, Koyuki thought to himself, a jade hand stretched out slowly, wanting to touch his face, but he thought of something and immediately retracted. He is so powerful and powerful, if you touch him, you will definitely be discovered. It's hard to explain by then. Thinking of this, Koyuki struggled again and continued to look at him. Under the sun, Naruto's face still looks very flavorful. If there are fewer beards, he must be a handsome guy. Koyuki looked at Naruto with her professional eyes for a while, and secretly came to a conclusion. Then she suddenly took out a small pair of scissors from her body, hesitated slightly, like the 6 paths beard on Naruto's face stretched out past. When Naruto woke up, he found that it was already evening, and he saw Koyuki sitting on the stone beside him, fiddling with the pebble in boredom. He couldn't help but froze for a moment, and immediately said, "Koyuki, why are you here?" "Here, this dress is yours." The next moment, Naruto picked up the clothes and looked at it, and his heart couldn't help but warm. At this time, Koyuki saw Naruto wake up and let out a happy cry, came over to take the clothes from Naruto's hand, and said with a smile, "Naruto, why are you asleep? You just lie outside in the daytime, but you're going to catch a cold." For Koyuki's concern, Naruto remembered it in his heart and smiled back, but he was thinking that he had split up dozens of clones just now, and he was so tired all of a sudden that he couldn't sleep, and even Koyuki came to give him. He put on his clothes and made small gestures on his face without knowing it. But at this moment, Naruto finally noticed the strangeness on his face, reached out and touched it, and couldn't help but be surprised. "Where's my beard?" Koyuki put his hands behind his back, pursed his lips slightly, and looked at him with big bright eyes, wanting to laugh but not daring to laugh. "Did you do the hands and feet?" Naruto thought of her at once. Koyuki suddenly smiled playfully. "Hee, Naruto, I think you look so handsome after cutting those weird beards. I really don't know why you still keep those beards." Naruto was dumbfounded for a while. This Princess Koyuki was so quirky. She cut her beard, it was so boring. If it goes on like this, will she cut the hair under her one day? Seeing Naruto's speechless expression, Koyuki said with a smile, "If you don't believe me, you can look in the mirror yourself." Naruto didn't speak, just stared at her. Regarding the beard on his face, he also wanted to cut it off before, but it would grow back in less than 2 days after cutting it off, so after that, he simply stopped worrying about it, but today he was suddenly attacked by Koyuki. After cutting it off, a flash of light suddenly occurred in my heart, and I thought of something. Because he is a traveler, he knows most of the plots clearly, and he also knows that Naruto seems to have a special connection with the 6 Paths Immortal, and he knows that the 6 Paths Immortal also has these beards on the face, so this beard, does it mean that it belongs to the Pujo of the 6 Paths Immortal heritage? In that case, why didn't his own father, Namikaze Minato? After thinking for a while, he still couldn't come up with the answer, but he already had the pleasure of exploring in his heart. After all, I must have some connection with the 6 Paths Immortal, so why don't I even have a power inheritance that belongs to the 6 Paths Immortal? To legend, the Uchiha and Senju clans have the inheritance of 6 Paths Immortals, namely Immortal Eye and Sage Body, and they also have obvious 6 Paths inheritance, but why there is no special blood inheritance? Could it be said that a large amount of chakra and strong vitality can also be regarded as a kind of Kekkei Genkei? Naruto couldn't help frowning slightly, thinking deeply. But at this time, seeing Naruto frowning, Koyuki panicked, took his arm and said, "Naruto, are you angry?" "I'm just curious, don't be angry. It's my fault." Now, Naruto finally came back to his senses. Hearing her apologetic appearance, he couldn't help laughing. "I'm not angry, I was just thinking about things just now." "Phew, it scared me to death. I thought you were angry." If you get angry and leave me alone, I really don't know what to do. Koyuki breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this, and then tightened his grip again. Holding Naruto's arm, "It's so late, you must be hungry, let's go eat something." After returning to the village, Naruto ate a meal hastily, then returned to his room, closed the door, and gradually sank into his own consciousness. In the consciousness space, there are dark and damp underground passages, heavy and huge metal iron doors, and dark yuhi-colored beast pupils. The sound of roar suddenly came out. "Roar! You bastard, what are you doing here? Long time no see Kyubi, Nine-Tails." Naruto stepped forward and looked directly into Kyubi, Nine-Tails' eyes and smiled. "I want to ask you some questions." Chapter 137 Millennium Fox. "Go away. Boy, you're not welcome here." Kyubi, Nine-Tails, doesn't have a good opinion of Naruto now. All along, no matter how he tempted him, he refused to use his power and let the seal loosen, and, what makes him even more mad is that the hated body belonging to Naruto who has always been on his side is disappearing and weakening, which also makes his plan fail again. Doesn't this guy hate it? Who is he? Naruto smiled slightly, and didn't care about Kyubi, Nine-Tails' scolding, just said, "Actually, I know some things, but these things are not comprehensive, so I came here to ask you for proof." "Hey, you know what to do with me, I don't know anything, don't bother the old man." Kyubi, Nine-Tails, shouted angrily, "Are you going? I'm welcome if you don't." Naruto suddenly burst into laughter, looked at Kyubi, Nine-Tails with a very unhappy look, and stepped forward and said, "Kyubi, Nine-Tails, don't forget, this is my world, this guy really takes this place as his own. You don't belong here. Bastard, are you laughing at the old man? If it weren't for this damn seal, how could the old man be trapped here?" Kyubi, Nine-Tails, was angry. He was already very pitiful for being sealed, and the owner of this body actually it is unforgivable to continue to stimulate yourself. When I am Kyubi, Nine-Tails, is it easy to bully? The next moment, Kyubi, Nine-Tails, roared violently. The huge chakra slowly overflowed the sealed space, and surrounded Naruto at once through the fence. Naruto frowned slightly and was unmoved. Suddenly, the spell seal on his body opened, and a chakra aura stronger than Kage level was released, which immediately suppressed the chakra attack of Kyubi, Nine-Tails, and said indifferently, "I told you a long time ago that this trick of yours is useless to me." Kyubi, Nine-Tails, reluctantly took back the chakra and finally said, "What the hell are you asking?" Seeing that he finally calmed down, Naruto smiled slightly and said, "That's right, we are the closest neighbors, and we should have a more harmonious relationship. The old man who is more chatty will go to sleep." "Okay, Kyubi, Nine-Tails, I won't say more. I'll ask you now, what powers does the Six Paths Immortals have?" Naruto asked him word by word, looking into his eyes. Kyubi, Nine-Tails, was stunned for a moment, looked at him in surprise, and then suddenly said, "Six Paths Immortal? That is a legendary existence, I have never seen it." Naruto looked at him and thought to himself, this Kyubi, Nine-Tails, was clearly created by Six Paths, and he lived with Six Paths for a while at that time. It can be said that Six Paths is equivalent to his parents, now they say they don't know each other. Ten Tails. Naruto simply said a word. "What? How do you know Ten Tails? Who the hell are you?" Kyubi, Nine-Tails, immediately widened his red eyes when he heard this. Naruto smiled slightly and said unhurriedly, "I not only know about Ten Tails, but also know that your 1 to 9-tailed beasts are all derived from Ten Tails, and this is the handwriting of the Six Paths Immortal. How dare you say you don't know him?" Kyubi, Nine-Tails' eyes are full of shock. This is absolutely impossible. No one else will know about these things except themselves, the tailed beasts. But who is this guy to know these things? How on earth did you know? Humans don't know these things at all. Kyubi, Nine-Tails, suddenly became cautious, and the look in Naruto's eyes was no longer contempt, anger, or other emotions, but it is to see him as a very mysterious guy. Naruto thought for a while, and suddenly said, "Well, I don't know the specifics, I just know that these memories have appeared in my mind since that day. You should know that the day I said that, I came here. Time in the body. Quote. Kyuubi Ninetales looked at Naruto, lost in thought. It's time to tell me, Kyuubi Ninetales. Kyuubi Ninetales raised his head and looked at him thoughtfully. The power of the Six Paths Immortal is omnipotent. He can create and destroy all things. He is God. Naruto was stunned. Is that all? That's how I remember it. Don't you know that he has some other specific abilities? It's been such a long time. The old man is old, and he forgot a lot of things. Kyuubi Ninetales suddenly yawned and said, Okay, the old man is going to sleep. Don't disturb me again. After speaking, he just turned around and lay down, facing Naruto with his butt. Naruto couldn't help but be speechless. Came here to ask for a long time. This Kyuubi Ninetales actually didn't tell himself anything. This 1,000-year-old fox really lived 1,000 years. Very unwilling to withdraw from the consciousness space, when Naruto opened his eyes the next day, it was already bright. After washing up, I was about to wake Koyuki up when the door was pulled open. Wearing a white dress, Koyuki walked in with a bowl of hot meat porridge in his hand, came to Naruto and greeted with a smile, Naruto, you are awake. Naruto was a little surprised by Koyuki's sensibleness. As a princess, he actually brought breakfast to himself. Hearing her greeting, he smiled and nodded. A graceful body, long black hair draped softly behind her. No makeup on her face, but she looks fresher and more beautiful. Under her makeup, she has a tender face that can be broken by blowing, and Yuhi's tightly squeezed lips seem to be moisturizing. Out of the water. Seeing Naruto staring at him, Koyuki's heart skipped a beat and he was a little overjoyed. Naruto looks at people like this at a young age. But although she thought so, she didn't dare to raise her head to look at her. The boldness of being a star in the past seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden. In front of this boy who was a few years younger than her, he was a shy boy. Girl. Finally, Naruto stopped looking at her, lowered his head and drank the porridge, thinking about something in his heart. At this time, Koyuki noticed that Naruto was no longer looking at her, and quietly raised his head to look at Naruto, but suddenly found that he was also very charming when he was drinking porridge, and his heart couldn't help beating violently. At this time, she secretly made a decision in her heart. After breakfast, Naruto wanted to wait here for Jiraiya to arrive, so he went to practice in the forest outside the village, and Koyuki was afraid of affecting Naruto's practice, so he didn't follow him, just said he would give it to him at noon, deliver the meal. Naruto was also very happy, and the princess helped to bring tea and food, and it seemed that such a day was not bad. But soon, Naruto sighed again. The town of Wenru is the hero mound, and he came out to experience this time. What is the difference between this and the Konoha village? Chapter 138 Koyuki in Distress. After a few days, Naruto's cultivation progressed slowly, and he was even more eager to go to other places, but carrying this oil bottle by his side really made him helpless. On this day, he plans to explain the situation to Koyuki and send her to live in Konoha for a while. However, before he could act, Koyuki suddenly suggested something to him. You want to learn ninjutsu from me? Naruto couldn't help his head go up as he looked at the weak princess in front of him. Yeah, Naruto, I'm so envious of how you can fly around. If I can learn ninjutsu, I'll be like you, and I'll be able to fly with you even without your back. Go, Koyuki said with a grin. Naruto wiped his cold sweat secretly. He came out to experience this time. How could he suddenly become someone else's master? What's wrong, Naruto? Don't you want to? Koyuki looked very disappointed. Okay, I originally wanted to talk to you about something, but since you want to learn ninjutsu with me, then you can learn it with me for 3 days first, Naruto said. Yeah, great, Naruto, Koyuki shouted excitedly, but she didn't look like a dignified princess at all, but more like a little girl next door. Seeing her happy face, Naruto also laughed heartily. So, while Naruto trained with the clone, the main body took time to teach her to sense chakra and practice various basic ninjutsu. Unexpectedly, Koyuki's talent is not bad, although she is now 17 or 18 years old, but after 3 days, she can't help but master chakra, and can use a basic avatar. Although it was full of flaws in Naruto's eyes, and the hand seal was very slow, it was already a genius level. I didn't expect that she, who was the first to contact chakra, would have such an ability. He couldn't help but look at it differently. After learning chakra, she was excited and novel, and her courage became bigger. In the past, she followed Naruto to receive protection. On this day, she suddenly wanted to go shopping alone on the street. This village is not very developed, there are only a few streets, but the streets are crowded with people, and there are also many hooligans in the village. Usually, Koyuki doesn't go out much, and as soon as he goes out, he walks to the place where Naruto practiced, so there is no danger all the time. And today, she just learned the avatar technique in chakra, and her self-confidence was bursting. She felt as if she had entered a new world, so she didn't care about moving around. As a result, it is conceivable that a beautiful girl like Koyuki has a 100% rate of return when she walks on the street. Maybe it will be fine for a while, but when someone sees her wandering around alone for a long time, her heart immediately rises. Evil thoughts arise. Unconsciously, Koyuki had walked into an alley, and behind her, followed by a few local gangsters. "Hey, little girl, it's so boring to go shopping alone. Would you like us to accompany you?" A frivolous voice came, and suddenly 3 figures walked towards her. Koyuki didn't expect someone to follow her, and when she turned around, she saw 3 men with lewd smiles on their faces. A trace of disgust flashed on their faces, and she felt a little scared at first, but she felt relieved immediately, and she had practiced ninjutsu like Naruto. The next moment she raised her head and scolded, "You scumbags, don't kneel down when you see this princess." The 3 men couldn't help but stare at each other for a moment, then looked at each other and suddenly burst out laughing. "This little girl is really interesting, she likes to call herself a princess, then let's be a knight for a while, ah ha ha ha." Koyuki was trembling with anger, and suddenly rushed up and punched a man on the bridge of the nose in anger, and the man was immediately beaten back, clutching his nose and groaning, "Damn, this stinky bitch actually dares to do it. Kill her." The other 2 let out a strange cry and rushed towards her immediately. At this time, Koyuki's face showed a look of eagerness to try. Looking at the figures of the 2 rushing up, although he was afraid, he was mostly excited, and his hands were not tight. Slow hand seal, the next moment his body was thrown to the ground, but with a bang, the person who was thrown became a piece of wood. The 3 of them were stunned for a moment, and exclaimed in unison, "It's a ninja." "Haha, be afraid, this princess is going to be a real hero today." Koyuki stood not far away and smiled proudly. A trace of fear flashed in the eyes of the 3 of them, they looked at each other, and suddenly rushed over again, Koyuki casually hand seal, with disdain on his face. However, just as she was hand seal, one of the 3 suddenly changed from he took out a wooden stick and threw it at her with a swish. Koyuki was caught off guard, stunned for a moment, and hurriedly retreated in shock, but was still hit in the arm by the stick. Although there was chakra, her little chakra was really useless, Koyuki exclaimed in pain, squatting on the ground, clutching his arms and screaming in pain. 3 laughed loudly. "What kind of ninja do I think I am? It turns out that it is not useful. Is it true that ninjas are like you? Haha, what a rubbish. You are not allowed to talk nonsense. Ninjas are the strongest." Koyuki immediately thought of Naruto when he heard several people insulting ninjas, stood up angrily and shouted, "Yo, how dare you be stubborn? You can't be stubborn after you've stripped it all away." A few people said and surrounded her. At this time, Koyuki was already in a mess. He could have jumped over the wall, but his mind was blank at this time, and he was in a panic. She was caught by the 2 of them separately, and then the other one forced her to reach out and touch her face. Koyuki yelled anxiously, "Naruto, come and save me." The 3 of them were even more excited. "Come on, no one will come even if you scream." However, as soon as the three of them finished speaking, a tall figure suddenly descended from the sky, and then with a few bangs, the two people holding Koyuki's arms flew out backwards, and a moment later the other person also flew out. Koyuki was stunned for a moment, looking at the tall figure in front of him, full of doubts. It doesn't seem to be Naruto. Is Jiraiya. This person has long white hair and a Yuhi-colored imperial robe. Looking at the back, he is definitely a representative of justice, and Koyuki has a good feeling in his heart. However, when the man turned around, Koyuki's face immediately became frightened, because the smile on the man's face was even more lewd than the three gangsters just now. Pretty girl, are you alright? Jiraiya greeted with a smile that she thought was very handsome but was actually very wretched. Koyuki opened his mouth wide, but was even more frightened. Chapter 139 Return to Snow Country. At this moment, a familiar voice made Koyuki immediately relax. Koyuki, are you alright? Don't worry about this lascivious toad. Naruto suddenly jumped out of her and said. As soon as Koyuki saw Naruto, he immediately rushed over and hugged him tightly, and shouted with lingering fears. It scared me to death, Naruto, you didn't come to save me, I almost. Having said this, she glanced at Jiraiya curiously and continued, Naruto, do you know him? He's the person I've been waiting for these days, and that's my master. Naruto introduced, but this guy is a pervert, you have to be careful with him. Jiraiya on the side was beaten to death by Koyuki's action of throwing himself into Naruto's arms, and now he has to be scolded by Naruto like this. His face suddenly collapsed, and he shouted in dissatisfaction, Hey, you bastard, I am your master. You have ruined my good image like this. Besides, you were standing by just now, why didn't you come out when this girl called you? Naruto, you've been protecting me all the time. Humph. It's abominable, but you're hiding and deliberately not coming out, it's really abominable. Koyuki immediately slapped Naruto in dissatisfaction when he heard it. It made Naruto embarrassed for a while, and Jiraiya stared at him enviously. I can't think of it, you are more promising than me. No wonder you have to be willing to go with me to find a woman, so there is such a beautiful girl here, hey, if I give up. Jiraiya cried out heartlessly rude. Koyuki's pink face suddenly became clear to Yuhi. Her unknowing dependence on Naruto's coquettish behavior usually seems to be nothing, but when someone pointed it out, she immediately panicked. Naruto didn't care about him, he pulled Koyuki and left, saying, Don't worry about this guy, he's just so disrespectful. Hey, I'm not old at all. Jiraiya protested from behind. Koyuki then giggled, and put his arms around Naruto's arm with a sweet face. Finding Jiraiya, Naruto finally breathed a sigh of relief, and next, it was time to deal with Koyuki's problem. Back at the hotel, Naruto and Jiraiya discussed a little, and called Koyuki over. Seeing the seriousness of the two of them, Koyuki's heart suddenly froze. Naruto, what's wrong? Is there something wrong? Koyuki said with a sly smile. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya, hoping he would say something, but the guy just closed his eyes and looked like he was hanging up high, and glared at him secretly. Naruto had no choice but to say, Koyuki, you have been following me for many days, and our journey will be full of dangers. It is really inconvenient to take you with me. Before Naruto finished speaking, Koyuki's body trembled, and then she said with a trembling voice, Naruto. Naruto, are you trying to drive me away? Naruto looked at her sobbing, so sad, as if she was a dumped daughter-in-law, and was speechless. Koyuki burst into tears. Naruto, I don't want to leave. If you leave, I'll be the only one left. I will send you to Konoha, you can live in Konoha first. As for Mitafu, you can go to the outside world to find his whereabouts through Konoha village. Naruto said, traveling in the ninja world is to encounter many dangers. Yes, to the extent that you can't even deal with a few gangsters now, it's really not suitable for you to follow me. Koyuki burst into tears. Naruto continued, also, there is a very powerful organization staring at me, and everyone there has the power to destroy a small country. You said that in such a situation, how can I let you continue to take risks with me? Quote. After persuading me for a while, Naruto's mouth was dry, and finally Koyuki nodded. Naruto finally breathed a sigh of relief, while Jiraiya on the side was already very dissatisfied with Naruto. How could this guy have the heart to make a girl so sad? Hey, looking at her crying, it really smells sad, and she sheds tears. Once agreed, the three are ready to leave the small village and send Koyuki back to Konoha. As soon as they left the gate of the village, Naruto found that there was actually a group of people standing in front of them. As soon as the three of them walked past, an old man of 50 walked out from the inside. He was wearing a rough cloth and came to the three of Naruto. Suddenly, salute to Koyuki, Princess Koyuki. The old man finally sees you again. What? Naruto was surprised, but he saw Koyuki looking at him with a complicated expression. Santeifu, didn't I let you follow me? The old man burst into tears with excitement. Princess Koyuki, since you came out that day, the old man has been following your whereabouts, but seeing that you have not returned to the country at all, the old man can't help it. Princess Koyuki, please, you must be the master of the snow country. After all, the team of more than 100 people leaned over and gave a salute. Please ask Princess Koyuki to be the master of the snow country. Take back the snow country. The expression on Koyuki's face was struggling, but he didn't dare to look at Naruto's exploratory eyes, just lowered his head and stopped talking. At this time, Naruto had already heard some clues from the conversation between the two. It seems that Koyuki already knew how to contact Mitafu, and Mitafu has been following her secretly, but she seems to have been avoiding this. Question. Thinking of some things in the original book, Naruto knew it. He stepped forward and patted Koyuki on the shoulder and said, since your people support you so much, how can you live up to their hearts? The country of snow belongs to your father, and he is now in Kazuhana. In the hands of the angry waves, it's time for you to take it back. Koyuki looked at Naruto, but suddenly said indifferently, Naruto, do you want me to go back to the snow country? Naruto didn't hear the strangeness in her tone. He smiled slightly and said, yes, go back to the snow country. I will help you take back the country, then you will be the one of the snow country-kun. Quote. Really? One kingdom-kun? Koyuki smiled lightly, and there seemed to be some mockery in her laughter. Looking at the bright smile on Naruto's face, her expression was very complicated, but in the end, she sighed slightly. Okay. I promise you. That's great. Princess Koyuki, you are finally getting back on your feet. Our country of snow is hopeful. Sadafu shouted excitedly, and the 100 people around also shouted loudly. Koyuki was expressionless, and sighed silently in his heart. Chapter 140 Take Back the Snow Country. So, the next itinerary became the road to the country of snow again. Santeifu had already prepared everything. When he came to the pier, there was already a big boat waiting there. More than 100 people took this huge boat ship to the country of snow. Koyuki locked himself in his room and didn't know what he was doing. Naruto knocked on the door, and Koyuki opened it to let him in. Koyuki, you don't seem to be very happy these days. Are you worried that you won't be able to retake the snow country? Naruto asked directly after sitting on her bed. Hearing Naruto's concern, Koyuki's eyes flashed with joy, but then he faded away and shook his head. What's the matter? Naruto demanded. Koyuki's expression became complicated, and he looked at Naruto, not knowing what he was thinking. Naruto was taken aback by her, and quickly took out the crystal necklace and handed it to her. By the way, this necklace belongs to you. Now that you are going back to the snow country, I will give it back to you. Koyuki reached out and took it, touching the residual warmth of Naruto's body on it, and a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Naruto noticed her expression, and could not help holding her round shoulders, looking into her eyes and saying, Koyuki, if you have any unpleasant things, just say it, I will share it for you, don't be alone. Suppressed, okay. Naruto's gentle words made Koyuki's Koyuki's body tremble slightly, his eyes fixed on him, and a halo of intoxication gradually rose in his eyes. Naruto. Suddenly, she swooped up, pressed his shoulders and pushed him down on the bed. A small mouth lubricated like a jade suddenly covered Naruto's lips, feeling excited kiss up. And Naruto was shocked by her sudden sneak attack and forced kiss, and he was kissed again. Feeling that Koyuki's soft tongue is constantly exploring, that jerky action made Naruto's heart become hot, and he was pressed under the princess's body and kissed, which would be unbearable for anyone, and Naruto also I had already seen that Koyuki had some meaning for him, but this time he didn't expect to kiss him emotionally. For a while, Naruto even forgot to respond, and just let her toss on her body jerky. Koyuki raised his head out of breath, his pink face dazzled Yuhi, his eyes were full of intoxicated brilliance, and Yuhi's lips were even more delicate. Naruto, do you know? I'm in love with you. Koyuki suddenly boldly confessed. I've been deeply in love with you since you rescued me and ran in the snow. Naruto was stunned, a little overjoyed, but also a little overwhelmed. In this way, there are more and more women who have a close relationship with him. How to sort out these things in the future? Ignoring Naruto's stunned silence, Koyuki continued. Although you are a few years younger than me, maybe you will despise me for being too big, but I will treat you with all my tenderness. I just ask you to let me stay by your side. As long as I can be by your side, I am not afraid of anything. Even if I die immediately, I will not regret it. It is said that women in love have 0 IQ. Now Koyuki is incoherent. Since he can die immediately, how can he stay by his side? While Naruto was stunned, an idea suddenly appeared. But soon, he came back to his senses. Facing Koyuki's sincere confession, he slowly sat up, stretched out his hand to hug her shoulder, and said softly, Princess Koyuki, you are the one who is going to become the queen of a country. I'm really happy to be liked by you, but I can't let you stay by my side, because there will be too many dangers waiting for me. I can't let you have any danger. A pause. Naruto looked at the lonely Koyuki and said, if something happens to you, I will never feel at ease in my life. Koyuki was shocked, and when she heard this sentence, her heart was filled with infinite surprises. It turned out that she had such a position in Naruto's heart. But, I really don't want to leave you. Can you just ignore the disputes in the ninja world? How good it is for us to live together in the snow country. Koyuki raised this somewhat selfish idea softly. Naruto slowly shook his head. Although he said that it was a wonderful thing to go to the country of snow with a beautiful woman like Koyuki, but when he thought of Sayu in Konoha village, Hinata, and other friends, he couldn't let it go, because he knew how much turmoil there would be in the ninja world in the future, and he had to face it. Naruto couldn't tell her these things, and even if she did, she would only hear more and more worried and more frightened. Koyuki, Naruto suddenly shouted and took her hands. I have things that I have to face, and only after these things are resolved can I feel at ease, and then I will go to the country of snow. Find you. Koyuki looked at him tenderly, as if to remember every word Naruto said. After a long time, she finally sighed slightly. Okay, Naruto, I will listen to you. I will not be willful in the future. I will wait for you to come to me in the country of snow, and then you must ignore me. Looking at her as if she was an abandoned niece, Naruto shook his head and laughed, but he also felt that she was more lovely and innocent. Thinking of the two of them getting along these days, his heart warmed. A few days later, the group set foot on the land of the snow country again. This time, Naruto Jiraiya was in charge. Kazuhana, who had been restless for several days, finally rushed out. After that, his face changed greatly, and he quickly commanded all the forces of the snow country to resist. However, when Naruto smashed a super big ball Rasengan on the city gate and collapsed the entire city gate, everyone was desperate. Looking at Naruto's method that seemed to be like a god, he suddenly lost his fighting power. Next, the unrepentant Kazuhana Furious Dao launched a final struggle and launched a fierce battle with Naruto, but in the end, he was no match for Naruto and was beaten to the ground. Koyuki to step forward. Naruto said, Kazuhana Raging Wave is right here. He has now been crippled by me, you can do whatever you want. Koyuki bit Kiba and stared at him for a while, then finally waved his hand and let him stay, ready to settle everything in the snow country and then publicly execute him. Kazuhana's face is now ashen. Under the unparalleled power of Naruto, he will lose without any suspense at all. He can't figure out that such a powerful ninja, no matter which country it is placed in, is an existence that everyone admires. How can you take care of the affairs of this small country?